on the 7-day station. Beholding a manifestation. It's time to renew your mind and rise.
This is the Hodo Show and the other Viewpoint. And I am your brother, if there is no other. I'm Hodo. Who are you? Calling, you on the air? Can you handle it? I don't think you really want to know. I'll tell you later. Caller, you on the air? Thank you, little brother. Not only is the beat on time, but it also has something for your mind. Waiting to get together for so long, but we just couldn't seem to find the right song to come together on. Caller, you on the air?
We just one step to the right. Come on, we just one step to the left. Yeah, we just say now break it down. We just say now rise it up. Now rise. Now rise.
Here's another hot joint for the 004. Legion!
All my queens, put your hands in the air. All my kings, put your hands in the air. All my queens, put your hands in the air. All my kings, put your hands in the air. Now walk with me.
Joint for the 004. Legion!
We just a step to the left. We just a step to the right. Come on, we just say not break it down. Come on, we just say not rise it up. Rise. Now rise. Get up. Get up. Get up.
Now that's your body. Are you still broke? Get up!
Radio! What a brother know. rise. U-N-I-T-Y.
Well, it's time to rise, y'all. Welcome, of course, to the Hodo Show and the Other Viewpoint. And I am your brother, if there is no other. I'm Hodo. Who are you? Well, tonight we're going to just give you a recap of some of the things that have gone on in the news this weekend. You know, we'll have our commentary as per usual. A few things this week and last week that we might not have covered in the last program because we were hooked in to doing, finishing up our series on H.R. 40, House Bill H.R. 40, dealing with reparations. And so we didn't get to a lot of other things last week. Next week, we have a guest coming in studio with us, a reggae artist, renowned, O.C. Roberts will be in studio with us next week. And we'll be bringing him in studio, and we'll be interviewing him about his brand new album that's coming out. And also coming up, either part of the next program or the next week, we're going to be doing a program breaking down what lobbying is and what lobbyists do. And some lobbyists have gotten caught doing it when they shouldn't have been doing it the way they were doing it. And some say they're the good lobbyists and they don't do it like that. So we're going to be discussing that week after next and maybe part of the next program as well. So, again, welcome to the Hodo Show and the Other Viewpoint. And we want to remind you that this program is being brought to you by RCE Notary, the mobile notary, meaning they come to you. You need those papers or you need that certification on there. Got to say, was that notarized by a notary? RCE Notary, they'll do it for you. Not only do they do it for you, but they come to you, as I said before. RCE Notary is a mobile notary. If you're interested in finding out more or hiring their services, 248-861-9212. That's 248-861-9212. 248-861-9212. Office hours are Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. That's Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Hey, give them a call. If you don't need the notary, you may know somebody that does. So make sure you write the phone number down, 248-861-9212. 248-861-9212. That's RCE Notary, the mobile notary. They come to you. All right. So as I was saying, a few things happened in the news. I know all of you heard about the infamous recording of Kirk Franklin and his son. We're going to play that tonight, hopefully. And a few things like how Mike Duggan had to walk back on saying that he didn't want certain brands of vaccine to come to Detroit, and he had to walk it back. Now walk it back. And he had to do that. Also, we're going to talk about Chicago Suburbs has said they want to give black folks in that area reparations. Is that a good thing? Also, made him talk about a traffic ticket that Martin Luther King got that changed the course of history. Had a lot to even do with a presidential election at that particular time. So we're going to walk that back, and we're going to start off with this one. I don't know how many of you heard about it, but there are many places around the world and even in this country that are starting to go alcohol less in bars. What do you think about a non-alcoholic bar? Not just a non-alcoholic beer or some non-alcoholic wine or some of the stuff with no alcohol in it and all of that stuff, but a whole bar alcohol less. What do you think about that? Had it queued up, but don't look like it wants to play. But anyway, we're going to check that out and see if we can find it again. and again. But yeah, there are many who want to go alcoholics and have started it in Germany and China, and even I think in Texas there's a bar. So let's check that out, see if we can find out more about it. This again is the Hodo Show and the Other Viewpoint, and I am your brother, if there is no other. I'm Hodo. Who are you?
Motion on the bows where the dark shapes proud.
It looks like a bar, it sounds like a bar, but there's something about it that's different. So Sans Bar is an alcohol-free space that is all about inclusion, safety, and having a lot of fun. 75% of people that come into Sans Bar on a regular basis do not identify as being sober or being in recovery. A lot of people just want to drink less.
And I don't have to worry about leaving my car here and getting an Uber home. I'll wake up without a headache.
How this all started is several years ago, dry January, right? And then dry January turned into dry July and then sober October. And you saw people sort of participating with a lot of social media influence on moderation in terms of short periods of sort of abstinence. And then what I think happened over time is people did this month of abstinence, and then it sort of grew into this larger lifestyle movement.
Have you tried this one yet?
No, I haven't tried it yet.
For a lot of people, soda and juice meet their needs if they're not drinking, but a lot of people also want something that feels a little bit more grown up. So I carry spirits, non-alcoholic spirits, some of which replace or are intended to be an alternative to a traditional spirit with which you're already familiar, like a whiskey or a tequila. They mimic those tastes.
These guys are the kings of their domain, the top of the top guys. People come in like, you got the non-alcoholic IPAs? I was like, yeah, I got like the best ones. One of the most important ingredients in beverages is the company that you keep. It's like, this is an important part of it. It's that energy that you have. It's that setting. And that's what we want to build here.
It is delicious.
Is it okay?
It is. It's really good.
Being the first time in a space like this, it's very relaxed. You know, I feel very at home, and I could see coming back to a place like this often.
What do you think? Non-alcoholic bars. Is that something that you personally would be interested in? Is that something that is necessary, seeing how many people have been hit by drunk drivers lately? Is that a good thing? Who knows? But tonight we're going to cover a whole lot more just as soon as we possibly can. All right, see a few of you locked in. What's up, Reese? And Crystal's there, and a whole lot more. Who else is there? Quite a few of you are coming in. Robin's there. Hey, baby boo. And, all right. COVID-19 is there. Y'all call yourself all kinds of stuff, huh? Anyway, want to go to this next thing that we have here. Now, I don't know how many of you heard about what happened at Mar-a-Lago. A lot of you may not have. And that is that there has been a surge of COVID-19 at Mar-a-Lago, at Trump's house, Palm Beach, Florida. Former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago club on Palm Beach has been partly closed because of COVID-19 outbreak. Mar-a-Lago on Friday said it closed the beach club and the a la carte dining room after an undisclosed number of employees tested positive for COVID-19. Banquet and event services remain open. The club said, "We will update you when service resumes," the statement said. So apparently somebody wasn't following some protocol for multiple employees to have COVID, huh? The statement also said that in accordance with federal public health guidelines, a thorough sanitizing and cleaning of any affected areas, and the club facilities has been conducted. The club also said it will continue a heightened environmental cleaning regime. Trump, former First Lady Melania Trump, and son Barron have been living at the mansion since they moved from the White House in January after the 2020 election. It's unclear if any of them have been at Mar-a-Lago recently. CNN reported that the family is at the club preparing for Barron's 15th birthday on Saturday, which was yesterday. All three contracted COVID-19 last year and have since recovered. We know this. But anyway, the important stuff is that, yeah, people are still following Trump's instructions, apparently. Mar-a-Lago, people caught COVID. And I know you also heard this stuff about Sharon Osbourne because she was defending her boy over there in England. And because of what Meghan Markle and the prince said about how they were treated while they were in England. You know, and this guy, he went on a tangent. But more importantly, one of those off of the talk, she decides to defend her buddy. And in defending her buddy, who a lot of folks thought sound pretty racist, she's being called out for the things she's done. Miss Osborne. And, or Mrs. Osborne, that is. And she has been called to the carpet by multiples of people who don't seem to like it. They even have put the talk on hiatus until they can resolve this thing. She and her co-host, did an interview the other day, earlier in the week, and Sharon Osbourne didn't appear to take it very well, even though she did apologize later on. But my thing is this: why apologize if you don't think you did something wrong, huh? If you say a certain thing, you should be able to stand by it if you really meant it. And so I'm not really that fond of folks apologizing if you can't tell whether they mean it or not. And I personally am of the mindset that if I said something a certain way, and especially if I said it publicly, I meant it like that. And even in privately, I meant it like that. See, I'm not one of those who tend to be talking about folks behind their back. Whatever I got to say, I can say it to your face. So as these people are being pulled out of the closet where they've been hiding for so long, whether it be racism or anti-Semitism or whatever y'all want to call one of them isms, if you say something, stand by it. Just like how Kurt Franklin, he checked his son, and his son pulled out the video on, at least the audio of what his daddy did. Now, you've had a lot of talk show hosts and celebs defending Kurt Franklin, and even many people in the public. But then you got them churchity folks who know they do the same thing at home. They cuss their children out too. And his son's a grown man. So his grown 32-year-old son decides to try to throw some shade on his daddy by posting that video to try to hurt his daddy's money. Now, the boy should very well know that if his daddy had not been making that money, he wouldn't have been taken care of the way he was. But at 32 years old, you shouldn't be so soft that I have to tell everybody what my daddy did, you know? So, and some say, oh, I'm so ashamed of Kurt Franklin. Why are you ashamed of Kurt Franklin? You don't know jack about Kurt Franklin anyway, except for his music. Either you like his music or you don't. He checked his son, and he checked his son. So what? Big deal. But he cursed at him. Well, you know, y'all be cussing. Y'all know doggone well y'all be cussing. So why are you so down on Kurt Franklin? And I know he hit his son up pretty hard, but that don't mean nothing. You don't know what the son did. Because as the son said, I'm not posting all of the audio. So how do you know that what he did was not deserving of what he got? So let's take a listen to that.
In May, he'll be 33. For many years, we have had a toxic relationship with him as a family. We've tried for many years through counseling, through therapy, to try to rectify this private family matter. Recently, my son and I had an argument that he chose to record. I felt extremely disrespected in that conversation, and I lost my temper, and I said words that are not appropriate, and I'm sincerely sorry to all of you. I sincerely apologize. I want you to know as a father that during that conversation, I called the family therapist and got that therapist on the phone to try to help. He never played that part of the recording. I'm not perfect. I'm human, and I'm going to make mistakes, and I'm trying to get it right. Please keep me and my family in your prayers.
So, Kurt checked his son. He said that the therapist was on the line with them. Don't look like the therapist did too much good, but his therapist was on the line with them. And, hey, his son said at the beginning of the recording that he did not play it all. The therapist was on the line with him. See, I just don't understand why Kurt is apologizing to his fans. He don't owe y'all nothing. That's between him and his son. It was his son's fault that he decided to air private family business to the public. Now, how many of you have checked your children and y'all go to church too? Huh? Y'all be Holy Ghosting and cussing 10 minutes after you get out the door good. Y'all be saying stuff about Sister Sugi before you can get out the door good. So don't be hypocritical on him, you know. Now, I don't condone a bunch of cussing, but you know, folks do it. But he checked his son. That's nobody's business. If anything, the people ought to be pissed at his son for being such a punk to try to put his daddy on Front Street like that. That's not how men are supposed to do. I mean, men talk to each other a certain way anyway. And I don't know if it was a flaw in how the boy was raised or the boy just soft or what. But I know one thing, and that is that Kurt don't owe y'all no apology for checking his own son. His own grown son. Now, if he was nutting up on him and y'all might say, well, he's a baby. If he was a baby, if he was a little bitty, y'all might say some stuff. Dude grown. And as Kurt was telling him what he was going to do to it, if you paid attention, his son said, do it then. But his son also said, do it then via telephone. He didn't say it in the room face to face with his daddy. Huh? So, should that be a major news story? Nope. Should his son be castrated from the community? Probably. until he can come back like a man and not be trying to put his daddy on Front Street. You know? That's not how it's done. Boy, the average father wouldn't have did that much talking. The average father would have just clocked him when it was time. I'm going to just be truthful. Fathers and their sons, especially if you raised your son, he was there with. See, it's different for some of you cats maybe who never was around your children ever. Then maybe some aspersions may be thrown your way. But dude raised his son, and the kind of money that this dude was making off of his albums and stuff, I can't see this boy being raised very poorly, you know, as some of us was in the hood, or some of us were. But even with that, we didn't think about punking out and trying to put our parents on blast, especially not your daddy. I just don't understand. I truly don't understand. But these are some of the things that happen. And kind of sort of seems like the boy is spoiled, because usually when children are spoiled, they think somebody owes them something. And for sure, don't nobody owe nobody jack. They don't owe your butt nothing. Once your parents have taken care of you, or even if they didn't take care of you, if you're an adult, your parents don't owe you jack. And you're wrong if you think they do. All right, we're going to go to another story. Now, this is the one that caught my eye today. It says Chicago suburbs plan to pay black residents reparations and could be a national model. Now, I'm going to read this already. Just that title on there made me pause a little bit. But let's get into the story. It says, decades ago, in the Chicago suburb of Evanston, Cordelia Clark ran a restaurant out of her kitchen and parked cabs for her taxi company in her backyard because black residents were effectively barred from owning or renting storefronts in town. Now Evanston is poised to become the first U.S. city to offer reparations or money to black residents whose families suffered lasting damage from decades of discriminatory practices. It's about time that someone has to come from the hard work of African Americans in this city. It's about time that something has been done that has come from the hard work of the African Americans in this city, proving that they should be treated as anyone else, said Clark, great-granddaughter of Dolores Robinson, who is 58. Evanston's initial approach to reparations is narrow and targeted. The city council, which has already committed $10 million over a decade to the effort, will vote on Monday to begin with a $400,000 round of payments. The first phase will provide $25,000 to a small number of eligible black residents for home repairs, down payments, or mortgage payments in a nod towards historically racist housing policies. The program could become a model for other cities and states grappling with whether to pursue their own reparations program. The burgeoning national movement has gained traction amid reckoning on racial inequality following the police killing of George Floyd and other black Americans last year. In Congress, a bill that would establish a National Reparations Commission to study the issue has drawn around 170 co-sponsors in the House of Representatives, all Democrats. President Joe Biden has not endorsed the legislation but says he supports a study. Advocates plan to lobby the White House for executive action if the bill, as expected, fails to pass a divided Senate. Now, you know I've just done the 3-week program on that bill that they're talking about, H.R. 40. So you can go to my YouTube channel, which is OVP Web Network. There's OVP Web Network. And check out the 3 episodes of that and get familiar. Matter of fact, if you listen to the first program specifically, it goes more in depth into the bill itself. Other cities, including Chicago, Providence, Rhode Island, Burlington, Vermont, Asheville, North Carolina, and Elmhurst, Massachusetts, have launched initiatives, though none has yet identified specific funding. California passed a bill modeled after the federal legislation, and lawmakers in New York and Maryland have introduced similar measures. Private institutions have also announced campaigns. The Jesuit Order of Catholic Priests last week pledged $100 million to benefit the descendants of enslaved people it once owned. Did y'all catch that one? Let me repeat that now. Private institutions have announced campaigns. The Jesuit Order of the Catholic Priests last week pledged $100 million to benefit the descendants of enslaved people it once owned. So y'all hadn't been talking about that one, huh? That the Catholic Church actually owned slaves. The Jesuit Order of the Catholic Church owned slaves. Reparations is the public policy prescription that addresses and redresses systematic racism. And Ron Daniels, who oversees the National African American Reparations Commission, which consulted with Evanston on its proposal. Objections. The practicality of implementing reparations programs, especially on a nationwide scale, is still a matter of debate. On the Reuters IPSOS polls taken in June of 2020, at the height of racial justice protests, found only 1 in 5 respondents agreed the United States should pay damages to descendants of enslaved people. 1 in 5 agreed. Some opponents ask whether taxpayers can afford to pay out what could be billions or even trillions of dollars. Others question how eligibility for such programs could be determined, whether by race, ancestry, or evidence of discrimination. In Evanston, black residents are eligible for the housing program if they or their ancestors lived in the city between 1919 and 1969, or if they can show they suffered housing discrimination due to the city's policies. The recipients will be randomly selected if there are more applicants than available funds in the housing program. Some black Evanston residents have objected to the plan's scope and size as inadequate, highlighting the difficulties inherent in designing a program that, by all accounts, can never fully ameliorate centuries of discrimination. Evanston, home to Northwestern University, lies between Chicago to its south and the wealthy North Shore suburbs along Lake Michigan. About 16% of its 75,000 residents are black. As across the United States, blacks in Evanston were subjected to redlining, a practice which banks refused to make housing loans in predominantly black neighborhoods to keep black residents from home ownership, with a key source of wealth. The impact of the historic and systematic discrimination on Evanston blacks' community persist. The Fifth Ward, where Robinson's great-grandmother ran 2 businesses out of her home, is predominantly black and struggling with inferior infrastructure. We're trying to catch up from hundreds of years of being suppressed, and it's just hard to catch up without some assistance, said Evanston resident and real estate agent Vanessa Johnson McCoy, who is black. The city's campaign will draw a new tax on legalized marijuana. Supporters say the funding mechanism is particularly apt, given how devastating the country's criminalization of marijuana has been to the black community. Evanston rejects racist reparations as an opposition group has noted that the initial payments will cover only 16 households. The group also opposes restricting that money to be for housing needs. True reparations means to repair you. You get a chance to say what it is that repairs you, said Rose Cannon, a member of the group who is black. National advocates say viewing reparations as only cash payments is far too reductive and that there is a need for policies that tackle infrastructure and institutional racism that created the inequities in the first place. These investees have to be addressed, or they will continue on into the future. No matter how many equity problems are in place, said Cam Howard, the co-chair of the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, or in COBRA. Even in the cities facing limited resources, local governments can still make restitution by updating school curricula, improving business development, providing housing opportunities, and offering apologies for past racism, Howard said. Evanston Alderman Robin Rue Simmons, who is black, spearheaded her city's initiative. She sees the upcoming payments as a critical first step. This is about our humanity, she said. It's overdue, and the time is now. So, Chicago Suburbs proposing to pay reparations to blacks. Now, first of all, no reparations should be split up city by city. That's the first thing that's wrong with that. Secondly, as the brother from Cobra said, money alone will not fix the problem. Secondly, they didn't offer anything. As I read to you guys in that series that I did concerning those of Jewish descent who were victims of the Holocaust, they were given land, minerally rich land. They were given the ability to get precious metals so that way they would be in control of their own destiny. So, and they were given equipment to work stuff, to work the land with. So these are the main things that's necessary, or some of the main things that's necessary when dealing with reparations. So as folks are counting on H.R. 40, which it looks like they're going to probably push it back under the bundle again, 32 years of H.R. 40 not being discussed. You cannot break this thing up into individual little pockets. It's got to be something that's going to represent every black person in the United States of America who is descendant of slaves. You can't break it up in bits and piece money out and all that. Because first of all, and y'all know some of your relatives, if you give a cat $1 million, he gonna give most of it back before the week is out, before the month is out, guaranteed before the year's out, because they're gonna buy up everything in sight. They're gonna find every brand name that even though they don't know who the name belonged to buy up their stuff. Can't give folks just money, because then once they give you money and you blow all the money, well, can't ask us for nothing. Whatever we do to you, we gave you reparations, gave you some loot. You were too dumb to use it for yourself. So it can't just be money. It's got to be something that's going to be long-lasting forever. It's going to be something that needs to repair this situation. Not just something you can just blow the money. Buying cars and half houses and all the dope you can get your hands on. Some of y'all, you know, some of y'all gonna go get that flute and all kind of thing. I'll be playing the flute like a mother. Huh? You can get you a ha. So no, can't give all of y'all no money. Need some stuff that's gonna last for future generations. So that is not a good idea. Now, for those who say, well, that's all I want, well, that's all you want, cool. But as a people who were messed up as a whole, the remedy should be that which affects the whole and not bits and pieces of the whole. Because if you only affect pieces of the whole, somebody gonna hold out and the rest of the folks ain't gonna get nothing. That's just how it is, you know. Y'all know this country. Y'all know the history of this country. Y'all know the history of the politricksters in this country who made deal after deal, treaty after treaty with the Native Americans. Those who were here before the other folks came and took the joint. How many treaties were broken with the Navajo, the Cherokee, the Chickasaw, the Blackfoot, huh? And many, many more. How many treaties? How many times was the trail of tears filled with tears and death because of a lie of a treaty? So now, there's got to be more to it than that. And if the folks give you some loot, you can't tear up the stuff no more. Because then you say, well, we paid y'all off. Y'all can't complain about nothing that goes on no more. Because y'all was dumb enough to just take a payment. Huh? You was paid off for your whooping. And that's it. It didn't repair nothing. Because remember, the whole emphasis behind reparations is to repair the damage that was done to us by others. To repair the mentality that was placed inside of our heads by others. To be able to have something substantial that can be shared with our future generations. And a couple dollars, $25,000, or even $1 million won't do it. How many times have you seen folks in the hood hit the lottery for some decent money and they're broke in less than a year? Y'all watched that with Rodney King. This brother had the holy hell beat out of him and died broke after winning that big hunk of change. Still died broke. So you can't just give somebody some money. There's more to it than that. Can't happen. All right. We've covered that portion. Now we want to deal with some of this other stuff that's going on. You know, I know many colleges have been telling the students not to go on spring break. Or at least if you go to spring break, don't go out on the beaches partying and so forth. But they refuse to listen. And as of this week, I think it's been like 4 days straight, there have been over 1 million people a day taking flights to go to some of these spring break party areas. Well, yesterday in Cali, not Cali, but in Florida, they, Miami Beach specifically, they put down a curfew. But these these party animals, they had to rush out there to the beach anyway. They didn't care what the law said. They didn't care about none of that. All they wanted to do was party up. They did not care whatsoever about the police or the mayor or whoever the city officials were, the governor, when they were told not to come to Miami's beaches. But they did it anyway. They don't care what the folks said. And that's why the COVID is going up. Take a listen.
Pictures out of spring break in South Florida, where the city of Miami Beach has declared a state of emergency. And what you're hearing there is people fleeing from pepper balls being fired into the crowd. The mayor calling the situation overnight overwhelming for local police and the neighboring police departments brought in to help. At least a dozen people were arrested last night after multiple attempts to disperse the crowds. The situation growing so dire, city officials are holding an emergency meeting this hour. An increase in travel to Florida and across the U.S. in fact, has health officials concerned. The TSA saying more than 1 million people passed through U.S. airports for the 10th straight day on Saturday, and it comes at a time when the CDC is still recommending Americans avoid travel. Let's go to the situation in South Florida, in Miami Beach. Randy Kay is there. So they are meeting, officials are meeting this hour, and are they also trying to, figure out how to get a handle of things or how to keep people from coming?
Yeah, they're certainly trying to get a handle on what's happening here, Fred. I mean, the state has now seen more than 2 million coronavirus cases, and yet you have all these spring breakers treating it like there is no pandemic at all going on, and they're partying here in Miami Beach and in these entertainment districts. Take a look at some of this video that we've seen, which is really explains why the city has put in this new state of emergency. The mayor is basically saying, look, spring breakers, we don't want you here. Don't come here to party. But it was quite a scene in the streets. Police had to move them out after this new 8 p.m. curfew. Many of the people were still staying in the area. It took some time to get them out, but this curfew is now in place. This area is closed as of 8 p.m. Starting last night. Also, the causeways from the mainland to Ocean Drive, where we are in Miami Beach, that is now closed except to residents and people who have business to do and hotel guests in that area. It's in place for about 72 hours. Right now, and as you said, they are meeting. The city is meeting right now to determine if maybe it would go as long as April 12th even when the spring break sort of officially ends. But there were more than 100 arrests last weekend. The people have been wall to wall, as you see in a lot of that video, not masked, and there were more than a dozen arrests overnight last night. But listen to this one reaction. We spoke to a spring breaker here, and this is what she told us.
Well, I feel like it's needed because, Corona is still around. I feel like a lot of the spring breakers are just not thinking about, the future and what could possibly happen if they keep coming, to Miami for spring break. So they shut down South Beach, and I live closer to Fort Lauderdale. So when they shut down here, it was just like a flux of people coming down to Fort Lauderdale. And it just since South Beach is the most popular one, they just trickle it down to Fort Lauderdale, and that's my home. So I'm even more worried about Fort Lauderdale.
And since the Super Bowl, Fred, it's worth pointing out there have been more than 900 arrests in this area. 50% of those arrests were from people from out of state. So they are here to enjoy the beaches, the beautiful beaches that we have here in the state of Florida, but also bringing some trouble along the way, at least some of them.
Well, so Randy, help people understand. So the fact that there were a lot of people. Now, were the pepper balls being used to disperse people, or were the pepper balls being used in response to something that happened beyond crowds along the beach?
Well, the pepper was used last weekend, and the pepper spray, and it was just the huge crowds here that they were trying to disperse. They did get into a sort of an altercation or a scuffle with police. There was a shot fired into the air. The mayor here has told us that. The mayor has also told CNN that there was a riot. That's the word that he used. So it has gotten quite a bit out of hand, and they're also very concerned about the party continuing and doing damage here in the area. So that's why they want to shut it down.
All right. So now you see why these numbers keep fluctuating. Because because of the because of these people and they spoiled tail children. They grown spoiled tail children. Won't follow instructions. Now, you parents, if your child was going to spring break, you should have told them in advance. If you take your butt down there to that beach, I'm cutting you off financially. You won't have no money to be partying with the rest of the year or the rest of the time you're in college if you can't adhere to the rules. So these people are going to be down there or have been down there piled up on the beaches, no mask on, shoulder to shoulder, getting blew out, hollering and screaming, woo, and all that craziness in the midst of a COVID pandemic. But if they get locked up, they get multi-fines. You same parents out there who are allowing your children to act like spoiled brats are going to be up in arms because y'all got to pay all that loot to get their butts out of jail, to pay for the lawyers, to pay the fines, all of that. When all you had to do was to tell your spoiled brat, you can wait another year to go to a doggone spring break. Well, what if they're a senior? Well, then they should be and had enough spring breaks that they don't have to go no more. Huh? Sometimes you got to keep the real thing, the first thing. The priorities are mixed up. People's priorities are mixed up. They don't seem to care about the lives of others if it puts them at a little discomfort where they can't have any fun. You're messing with my fun. You're a stick in the mud. You're a party pooper. Well, better be a party pooper than a pallbearer. Huh? Anyway. So, we need to take a firmer grasp on what's happening with our children. Matter of fact, let you hear a little bit of that audio dealing with Trump and Mar-a-Lago. Even though I already talked about it, let me let you hear a little audio on that. Let's see.
Biden there in his remarks, but we have some news from former President Trump, where he lives now at the moment. I'm just going to put this up on the screen. And we're learning right now that Mar-a-Lago there down in Florida has partially closed after a COVID-19 outbreak. We have some video we want to show you too. So right now, Mar-a-Lago, former President Trump's Palm Beach, Florida club has partially closed after a COVID-19 outbreak. The Trump organization telling Fox News that as a precaution, some of the resort's workers are under quarantine, and a section of the club will be partially closed for a short period of time. The extent of the outbreak and what portions of the club were closed or how it was affecting the former first family were not immediately clear. Trump moved to Mar-a-Lago after leaving Washington back in January and has spent the week since laying low, golfing, dining with friends, meeting with Republican Party leaders, and plotting his political future as he mulls running again in 2024. But a person familiar with club operations said that out of an abundance of caution, the club had partially closed a section for a short period of time and quarantined some of its workers. The people spoke on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to discuss the situation by name. But so, according to several people familiar with this situation, just to reiterate, including a club member who received a phone call about the closure on Friday. A receptionist at the Mar-a-Lago club confirmed the news, saying it was closed until further notice because of a COVID-19 outbreak there. So we'll be following this story here on News Now from Fox in case we do get any more information.
All right. So you see, it wasn't just me talking about it. Now I got a story here that I know for a fact that most of us did not know. It says the United Negro College Fund elects its first ever African-American chair of the board in its nearly 77-year history. 77 years, United Negro College Fund never had a black man in charge of the money. Huh? The historic first for black folks just keeps pouring in. This time, it's manifested itself in the form of one of the foremost organizations providing financial aid and broad support for black college students announcing the recent election of its first ever African-American chair of the board. The United Negro College Fund, or UNCF, elected Milton C. Jones to chair of the first UNCF board of directors last week and made the formal announcement Tuesday with an official press release that launched or lauded the Atlanta businessman and civic leader becoming the first African American to hold that position. It added, Jones will work to grow the UNCF endowment benefiting the 37 historically black colleges and universities belonging to the UNCF network of member institutions. The announcement may have caught some people off guard who assumed UNCF already had a black chair of its board. But Jones succeeded William F. Stazzer Sr., a white man who was chair of UNCF board for the past 11 years. The press release also listed the people who held the position before him, including John D. Rockefeller III, the businessman Michael H. Jordan, and Jack Stahl, all white men. Considering the history behind the renowned philanthropic organization founded nearly 77 years ago, its primary objective is and always has been to eliminate socioeconomic barriers that stand in the way of pursuing higher learning by raising money to pay black students college educations and fund historically black colleges. Conventional wisdom might suggest that its board was not just always chaired by a black person, but also comprised of mostly black people. However, a quick glance in history and on the UNCS website shows that far from true. Provides some precious context that may be missing from the collective conscience when thinking about the UNCF's leadership. It also underscores what an important and historic milestone Jones' election is for the organization. Founded in April 25th of 1944 by Frederick D. Patterson, a black man who will go on to receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor, UNCF's early support from financier and philanthropist John D. Rockefeller was regarded as essential. Mary McLeod Bethune helped get then President Franklin D. and First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt to support its efforts, as well as ultimately leading to more help from other white leaders, including President Harry Truman and then Senator John F. Kennedy, which helped attract more philanthropists to finance the UNCF. It was seemingly inevitable for its board of directors to be led by white men. In fact, white people have played steady roles throughout the UNCF's history, something that the organization has never tried to hide. It's just that the announcement about Jones' election has drawn attention to the truth that, which is perhaps not widely known. According to the website, the UNCF has 18 directors on its board, including Jones, about half of them to be non-black, but the UNCF's institutional directors, presidents, and HBCUs that are UNCF members are all black. Further, the UNCF leadership team, led by President and CEO Dr. Michael Lomax, is about 99% black. UNCF described its board on its website. The men and women who guide the actions of the organization are a diverse group of people, and with their help, the organization ensures as many students as possible make it to and through college successfully. The request sent to the UNCF for comment was not immediately returned, but Lomax raved about Jones in a statement included with the press release. All of us at the UNCF are excited to have Milton become our new board chair. Lomax said Milton brings a wealth of business knowledge and a thoughtful, collaborative leadership approach that will help us thrive and continue to drive the UNCF and our HBCU's impact and growth. So, all of these years, Lou Rawls was raising money for the UNCF, and it wasn't led by black people. Now, is that a bad thing or a good thing? Is that a bad thing or a good thing? That the money raised for black college, the folks in charge of the money weren't black or aren't black. Finally, because the chair still can't overrule what the board says. So he'll be the figurehead for now. Now, something you need to know about black colleges. Yours truly attended when I attended Grambling State University. And while in school, I learned about the HBCUs, historically black colleges or universities. Every black college in the United States is within 5 miles or a little more or a little less of a white college. And there was a thing called a dissent decree that originally went along with the black colleges being formulated. And that was that eventually all of them, because they never expected them to succeed this long, they were not supposed to last as long. So within the dissent decree, it was a plan put forth whereby all of the black colleges would be merged back into the white colleges. And that is why your board of regents for most colleges, I know when I was at Grambling in particular, I think there were about 50 people on the board of regents, and less than 10 of them were black at the time that I was in college. So when I looked through the yearbook when I got it, that astounded me even as an 18-year-old. So then I persisted to call my cousins and different folks that I knew who were at other black colleges to check out how their board of regents was laying. And that was par for the course for all of them. Most of the board of regents and the folks who was running the black universities were white. So it should not be a shock that those same kinds of folks were the ones in charge of collecting the money for the black universities. It's just been a blessing that these folks didn't do something to totally cut the loot off from the black universities. So perhaps they have done a good job, but if the majority of the board of regents and those who raise money for like the UNCF are not black, can we be sure that the black colleges are really going to be able to fulfill all of the needs of its black students or of the student population in general? Because a lot of the black colleges, some white people go there, some Asians will pop up there, you know. But the majority of them are black. And so with that being said, what's going to happen? Who's keeping an eye on what these folks are doing who are running these colleges to make sure that every dime is getting where it's supposed to go? And more importantly, should black colleges depend on white people to function? Should that be a part of the reparations? Should that be a part of the reparations? To make sure that the black colleges never need any funding. That they should be so totally funded that if every black person in America wanted to only go to black universities, they could. And get education that was equal to anybody on the planet. Or better. Should that be part of the reparations? Or should we make sure that that's what's being done anyway? I know that many of the black colleges, their alumni associations do a whole lot. Lou Rawls did a whole lot for the United. Y'all used to love to watch that. The Lou Rawls UNCF specials. He bring all those different artists on there performing. And it would raise money for black colleges. When is the last time any of you have seen the UNCF concerts going on nationwide TV as they did when Lou Rawls used to host them? Has anybody taken up the mantle that Lou Rawls once held to make sure that the black colleges continue to function? Now, one thing I'll say about Grambling, since I was there, I can't speak for the rest of them, but I can speak on what I saw at Grambling. And you know how the colleges, you had to take the SAT in order to get into the school. At the time I was there, even if you failed the ACT or the SAT, they still let you in. And what they did is that they would take you from where you are. Say if you read on 6th grade level, they would grab you from there and get you up to where you should be in order to be a proficient college student. Now, I don't know if the rest of them did it. I know Grambling did, okay? I would hope that the rest of them would have done that. Because I know, like, for instance, the history of Tuskegee, where they were founded with the purpose of making more black teachers so that more black people could be educated. So the mission of the black colleges has been a very important one throughout its reign in our midst. So we need to make sure that we always have something of our own. But if it really is our own, we should be totally in charge of it. And nobody else should have their fingers in there dipping and dabbing. I'm just saying. Even though they may have done a good job, but then again, maybe they haven't. For instance, when I was there and taking philosophy and the course they called non-Western culture instead of calling it Eastern culture, even the naming of said course, non-Western culture, instead of just saying Eastern culture. all of these particular courses were all taught by white people when I was there. I can't speak for it right now, but when I was there. So could that be an offshoot of the Board of Regents being controlled by all white people in a black college? I don't know, but it seems very possible. So we need to make sure that we keep an eye on our stuff, the same way we need to be keeping an eye on the schools in our community, the public schools. Because we haven't been keeping eyes on our public schools is why they're in shambles. Now, there are 100 people or 50 people that come on a regular to those school board meetings that have done for years. The only problem is that, like here in Detroit, you have a city filled with about close to 900,000 people. If only 100 people were showing up at the school board meeting or the city council meeting or whatever, prior to COVID, I'm talking. If those are the only amount of people showing up, if the small amounts of people like that is why urban communities keep getting ganked. There's not enough eyes there to watch what the folks are doing. And until more step up and pay more attention, because I know most of y'all don't care. Yeah, and I can say most, because the most or the majority are the ones who are not paying attention. And if the majority aren't paying attention, that's a sign that they don't care. I don't give a doggone how much you complain or say, they not teaching my baby. Well, that's your fault. The city's not doing this right. But you never go down there to see what they're talking about. Or get on the Zoom call or even watch it on TV. Because most of the cable networks in this country have a way to view a public access portion where you can view your city council meetings. And if they don't, your said city, your community, your so-called activists, your so-called NAACP and other stuff need to be petitioning the city officials to make sure that there is public access for the cable companies to carry city council meetings and so forth, so that you can see how the budget is going. So you can see who's being given the contracts and how easily were they given the contracts, and were these contracts that were given out going to be something that's going to be beneficial for your community? Will it provide any jobs for the majority of your community? The majority residents? Will it add anything to the tax base to make sure that your streets don't have a bunch of dips and holes in it? Will it provide to make sure that the fire hydrants, enough tax dollars to make sure that the fire hydrants around your neighborhood are working properly? These are the things that are necessary when making them said deals. And if your city councilman or your school board's not telling you, or you don't know or have a way to find out, that's a problem. Then, as I'm looking what Slimac is putting up there, all of these folks are coming from around the country. They going to these spring breaks, no mask and all this stuff. And she's saying that y'all better hurry up and get vaccinated. Because all these people are doing some crazy, wacky stuff. Huh? And then you got these different states who are doing away with the mask regulations, where they're not making people wear masks. That's not a good thing. As you watch the numbers here in Michigan of those infected to go above 3,000. Yeah, the death rate went down. It was 0 one day, but it went back up to 50. The rates here in Michigan have gone up. It's 3,700 as of, I think, today. Over 3,700. And That's higher than it was in January. So things are going backwards. Because the governor allowed y'all to be able to go into restaurants and bars. Some of you restaurants and bar owners, y'all not doing what y'all supposed to do. I rolled past a few yesterday and took a look. Parking lots crowded. Bars, cars all around the mud. And no, the people weren't sitting outside underneath a tent. Rolled around and looked at some restaurants out in the burbs as well. Just looked. Parking lots full. Almost filled as though the whole joint was full to almost capacity. Y'all know that ain't how it's supposed to go. Y'all know better. For months, I've been talking about how folks have been undisciplined. Hard-headed, undisciplined people. Then, when y'all do these undisciplined, hard-headed things that could very well make the governor come back and have to shut stuff down again, then y'all gonna want to blame her. And those of you who are out there in the burbs, who are the main ones going against her, the governor, going against Gretchen Whitmer, y'all are the ones who are doing the most damage. Y'all are the ones who don't want to wear no mask. Y'all are the ones who just doing some idiotic stuff. Stop it. Stop it. Follow instructions. Huh? But the history of those who are the so-called forefathers of the United States, a lot of them were undisciplined too. I'm not talking about the George Washingtons and the Thomas Jeffersons. I'm talking about those who came over here to so-called escape tyranny. Some of y'all's descendants were the ones that they released from the mental institutions. Yeah, some of your descendants, and y'all know it, were the ones that released from the mental institutions. Some of them were the ones who were robbers and thieves and murderers and rapists when they released them from the prisons and just sent them over to America, to the new land across the ocean. Then the others were the rich folks who came from fame and fortune, who came specifically to get rich. Those were the bulk of the people who came to the United States. So I'm not surprised at how undisciplined the people who stole the country are. Surprise me and start being disciplined. That would be the surprise for me. Surprise me and start being disciplined so that these numbers can go all the way down around the country so that we can start getting some normalcy around this joint. Y'all complain about being in the house. Y'all complain that it's violating your civil rights and all this old nonsense, violating your constitutional rights, rather. All this old nonsense. But yet, y'all don't want to fulfill what the Constitution said that the government is supposed to provide for you. Liberty, life, and the pursuit of happiness. You do not have happiness when a bunch of folks are croaking and getting sick. Ain't no happiness in that. Can't have no life if you crazy folks don't want to keep your mask on and don't want to keep your distance and want to pile up on beaches. You do not have the liberty to desecrate my freedom to want to have the life and the pursuit of happiness. So when y'all talk about all of this stuff violating your constitutional rights, in essence, you are the violators, for you prohibit others from having that which you claim is being taken from you by your actions, through which you exhibit total hard-headedness and disorderly conduct. All right. I want to let you know also again that this program is being brought to you by our sponsor, RCE Notary, the mobile notary. That's RCE Notary, the mobile notary. The notary that will come to you. Now, you know from time to time you have that paperwork that you need to get notarized. You know you do. But you say, man, I wish I knew where a notary was. Well, this is the time right now to write this number down. 248-861-9212. That's 248-861-9212. One more again, 248-861-9212, Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. That's Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. for RCE Notary, the mobile notary, the notary that will come to you all throughout southeastern Michigan. Call RCE Notary or pass this number on to your friends and family members so they guaranteed and certified they'll always have a notary on their side. All right. As we continue, let's see what we want to talk about now. Oh, got to mention this. For those of you out there who have loved this sister's music forever, for the last 40 years or so, Anita Baker, she's requesting that none of her fans, all of you who love her music, she's requested, don't buy it. Don't download it. Do not buy it. Do not download it. That's what Anita Baker says. Because she's in a battle to get her masters. Because I think the allotted time for that label or those companies who owned her masters has run out. And now it's time for her to get control of her masters. And they're not giving it to her, according to her. It says Anita Baker asks fans not to buy or stream her music as she battles for her masters. The soul music icon says she is legally entitled to her master recordings and referencing Prince in her tweets. And for those of you who may very well be too young or who have forgotten, Prince went through a thing with Warner Brothers whereby he signed some paperwork when he was a teenager, maybe 16 or something like that, when he joined in with Warner Brothers. I can't tell you his exact age, but he signed away his own name. So any of his masters that had the name Prince, he wasn't able to get control of them. And apparently he didn't find out until the late 80s, early 90s. And when he found out and tried to fight for him, they pretty much cut him off. And that's when he left Warner Brothers and he changed his name to The Symbol so that way any music that he wrote henceforth, they wouldn't be able to own it. He would totally own it. And this is something that's truly important to every writer, script writer, every musical artist who writes songs. All of you need to own your masters. I don't care what the record label says. Start writing your songs and owning your masters. If you write the song, copyright it before you give it to the to the studio, to the record label. Copyright it ahead of time so that you'll always own your own stuff. Because that's the only way you're going to really make the real money. Because they're going to give you a quarter out of $1 or less. So let me continue with this. On the eve of Grammy Sunday, Anita Baker has asked fans not to buy or stream her music. The Detroit-based icon posted on Twitter last week that she'd outlived all of her recording contracts and that the right to her master should legally revert to her. But Baker is referencing copyright revision, which allows musicians to retain their copyrights after 35 years. However, the law doesn't mean that reversion is immediate or automatic, according to the Future of Music Coalition, a music education and advocacy group, per their website. There are steps a musician must take to regain their copyright under the law. Anita Baker, 63, says that the time is up and that until she can regain those copyrights, she wants her fans to avoid her music, which includes 7 studio albums and 1 live album. They include classic releases such as songstress, rapture, compositions, and hits like Sweet Love, Caught Up in the Rapture of Love, Giving You the Best That I Got, all which Baker co-wrote. When fans questioned the directive, Baker schooled a few on the finances of the music business. In the 1990s, the late artist Prince, one of the most prolific musicians of his era, publicly fought his record label Warner Brothers for the rights to his master recordings. In most record deals, master recordings are not owned by artists outright, although artists make the music in complex financing of the music industry. Artists are advanced money to record and promote their album. This is basically a loan that they pay back through record sales. However, royalties continue to be paid out long after artists are commercially viable, and that is the essence of why artists are trying to negotiate their contracts to get the rights to these earnings before copyright law is up. In her response to a fan who she dedicated a Spotify playlist to her, Baker echoed Prince, who famously didn't allow his music on YouTube, had only done a streaming deal with Tidal before his passing in 2016 because of Jay-Z's ownership stake. Matter of fact, Prince went as far as to tell all black artists to put their music on that particular site because Jay-Z owned it or had the majority ownership of it, and Prince did put his music on there and was telling all the artists to do that, but don't look like people followed suit. Baker even directly referenced the Minneapolis icon in her tweet describing music streaming services as thieves in the temple and using Prince as a GIF to illustrate her point. Baker broke down the hard numbers of streaming services and what an artist actually gets from each spin. And furthermore, Baker wants you to know that streaming audio is not as highly quality as it should be. Baker, like Prince, is one of many artists who have now spoken out about the unfairness of music contracts. Is one of the reasons so many artists have ancillary careers now, from beauty brands to athletic wear to corporate endorsements and partnerships. Yeah, you have to get other deals when you're an artist. So that way, and it's the same way the athletes do, because of their contracts. You got to make sure that you have money coming from all over the place. And you got to make sure that in your contracts, you're not signing away your rights. That's why it is very important that every artist brand new artists especially, must have an entertainment attorney so that they can look over the contract that you're supposed to sign before you sign it. Now, if the said record label don't want you to get an entertainment attorney or say, well, if you don't put this in it, we can't sign you, well, the hell with them. Because that means they were out to gank you from the jump. And this is the information that most entertainers are never told. You must own your rights. Sam Cooke did it, but then the other part is that quite a few artists who were either in charge of the rights to their music or in position to be in charge of it, strangely come up dead. Michael Jackson, Prince, Sam Cooke, just to name a few. The ones who were advocating for black artists be in control of their music. Remember, Michael Jackson told everybody that he owned half of Sony Music because of the business dealings. I'm going to have to play that for you one day, where Michael told him, yeah, a lot of you think all I like to do is sing and dance, and I do. He said, but I'm also very good in business. And because Tommy Mottola, he's a devil. Talked about how Tommy Mottola followed Mariah Carey around after they were no longer married. You know, they had separated. He had people following and videoing Mariah Carey, because she used to be married to Tommy Mottola, the guy who was in charge of Sony Music at that particular time. And when Michael went to release one of his albums, and they held it up. They held up all the music videos. They held up the releasing of the album just to mess with his money. So then he went and did an end around on them and bought the company, or half the company. And soon after that, Michael wasn't here anymore. Likewise, Prince had been set himself free and had commenced to publicly telling other artists how to get free from the thumb of the record labels. He ends up dead. Things to pay attention to. However, for artists who can't command those big deals and who make much of their money on the road, the pandemic has severely impacted their ability to earn a living. Fair payment for streaming media would certainly help. But Baker does know a good song when she hears one, giving Anderson .Paak and Bruno Mars a nod of approval for the new Leave the Door Open. Oh yeah, that's a jam too, that Leave the Door Open. Ooh, that Bruno and Anderson .Paak, that's a burner there, boy. That mug is hot. She posted to her Twitter saying, that's an old school love song. Mars responded saying, I love you, Anita. Thank you so much. Anyway, Anita Baker does not want you buying her music right now. Don't download it. Don't buy it at all until she's sure that these folks are not going to gank her anymore. And so now you know why many artists end up broke. And it's not just those other labels. I mean, folks had to sue Berry Gordy too. Martha Reeves, Stevie Wonder, they had to sue Berry Gordy. Who would have known that folks was ganking at Motown too? I mean, just think about it. You have a label, you in there writing, right? You get all these songs, you in there practicing and rehearsing, and some producer or some station owner say, hey, come here, man. Record what they're saying, and then send it to me, and I'm going to copyright it right quick. And they have people in place so they can copyright these other folks' songs, send them off, and the people never know that they don't own the copyrights to their own music, but then they don't check because they are so happy to be there that sometimes they forget about the business. And that's what artists do. You know, artists, those of us who love to be on stage and screen and so forth, sometimes the mere aspect of being able to fulfill our dream, to get an opportunity to be on stage in front of hundreds and thousands of people, and they cheer for you, and sometimes and that can be overwhelming, where you feel so good that you bringing joy to them, and in turn you fulfilling your dream, that you forget the business. And that's what must be done first. That's what Billy Sparks told me when I interviewed him. Many of you don't remember who Billy Sparks is. If you saw the movie Purple Rain, Billy Sparks was the guy with the big white glasses, the big white rim glasses, and he was telling Prince, "Kid, don't nobody want to hear your music but you. You just like your daddy." And then Prince said, "All right, Billy." That's Billy Sparks, a Detroit native. Man who has promoted and produced and been with some of the top artists, including Prince, for decades. When I interviewed Billy Sparks, he told me that instead of calling it the music business, it should be called business music, because the business end is much more important. That must be done first, because without the business, your career is done. And in many cases, because of folks not owning the masters and so forth, some of these producers, some of these folks who command a big presence on these record labels have ganked a lot of folks through wanting to have a sexual fantasy even with the dudes. Not just with the women, but even with the dudes. Some of these male producers have halted folks' careers because the men wouldn't have sex with the men. Not just the women. They have basically what they called blackballed folks from the industry, where they weren't able to get another song ever produced. I know folks that this happened to. I can't name names right now because they don't want the name mentioned, but I know them and I've heard the stories directly from them. And the only reason I'm not going to mention the names is because they told me not to. If they hadn't told me not to, I'd be blowing them out the water. The ones who did it to them, not the artists it happened to. But these folks had enough moral stability. They said, "Man, I'm not doing that." So they just walked away from millions of dollars. Then you have the ones who record other folks' music. You're a new artist, or you're trying to shop your music and you go into the studio, whether it be here or around the country, and you're shopping your music with these big record labels trying to get a deal, and somebody records your music. You might leave the country performing with your band, say in South America or something, and you come back and your stuff is being played on the radio by way of another artist. But if you have your copyright, then you can make sure that you can sue the pants off of them. Or you can take a buyout if you choose to for millions of dollars. But you got to have your paperwork well in hand. It's got to be done. So that's why it's important. So as Anita Baker said, don't buy her music. Don't upload her music till she knows for sure that these folks are going to give her due. All right. So these are some of the things that we're going to talk about. And I want to remind you also, next week we're going to have a musical artist in studio here live with us. We're going to have O.C. Roberts, reggae artist, world-renowned reggae artist. O.C. Roberts is going to be with us. And he's a friend of mine as well. That he used to do a reggae music show also where I used to work. And I used to be one of his producers. And O.C. has a style that, hey, you just can't deny. And I think he has a new song he wants you guys to hear. And we're going to be debuting it here live next week. So make sure you tune in for that. And that's something that's coming at you. Now, this week, I got 2 you big dummy moments, right? One from the mayor of Detroit, and another one from a nurse who was down at the TCF Center. So which one should I do first, huh? Now, this one on the mayor, it happened maybe a week or so back, but this one is more recent. So let's start with the one that's more recent. And this is one of those you big dummy moments. Says a nurse was busted stealing COVID-19 vaccines from the TCF Center in Detroit. This happened. A nurse is accused of stealing 2 COVID-19 vaccine doses from the TCF Center in Detroit. Detroit police arrested a woman Monday after a healthcare worker spotted her pocketing 2 syringes of Moderna vaccine. She was detained immediately on site. The nurse works for one of the firms contracted by the city to help administer the vaccines. The 2 doses were held for evidence, and everyone who arrived at the TCF Center for a scheduled appointment did receive their vaccination. Detroit Chief Operating Officer Hakeem Berry said in a statement Wednesday, Berry said that the doses are carefully safeguarded. From the time they are delivered to the health department, those doses are kept under tight conditions every step of the way until they are delivered in the syringes onto the TCF floor to be administered, where there are several police officers, security guards, and cameras, Berry said. Each dose is accounted for at the end of each day. We know that each dose is precious, and we are proud of the staff members who would not allow this to happen and spoke up to prevent this nurse from leaving the work site before she could be arrested. Detroit police are still investigating the theft. Now, I don't care how much security you got. I don't care how many cameras you got. Somebody who a good booster, who got some quick sticky fingers, they still can get away with this stuff. Now, this woman was caught with those 2. How many 2 syringes? How many days has she been working there? And do they need to roll the camera footage back and see, did she get some the day before? Ooh, pardon me. Sorry about that. I tried not to do it, but hey, did she get away with any more doses before that day or any of the days prior to that? But with all said security that they say was there, and somebody did see her, and from what I gathered in the news, it was one of her fellow workers that caught her, not the security and not the cameras. And she, you big dummy. All of that stuff going on. Folks needing this vaccine. And you're going to try to steal 2 syringes with the... Really? So, to that nurse, this is your you big dummy moment. Also, we have one from the mayor of the city of Detroit, Mike Duggan. This is your you big dummy moment, you know. Now, a lot of you may have heard about a couple weeks ago that Mike Duggan tried to say that he didn't want a particular vaccine to come into Detroit. Now, you're in the midst of a pandemic. The government is trying, the federal government is doing their best. The White House is doing their best to try to get as many people vaccinated as they possibly can. And for Duggan to say something that dumb about he don't want a particular vaccine to come into the city of Detroit, is a you big dummy moment, you know. Mayor Mike Duggan caused a bit of an uproar last week when he said he was declining 6,200 doses of Johnson & Johnson's coronavirus vaccine. The mayor at the time said he wanted Detroiters to get the best vaccines on the market. Public health experts said Johnson & Johnson vaccine is highly effective, especially where it matters most right now, preventing hospitalizations and deaths. But there is a perception about Johnson & Johnson vaccine that public health officials want to combat, as they tell Americans to get the first vaccine available to us. He's basically declaring one vaccine better than the other. That's the problem. The mayor has spread misinformation about a vaccine. That misinformation is going to take hold in some portion of the population, said Chad Livengood of the Detroit Cranes Business. Duggan has since said the city will accept future shipments of Johnson & Johnson vaccine and penned an op-ed in the Detroit Free Press, seeming to walk back statements about Johnson & Johnson being an inferior vaccine. He is now urging Detroiters to get whichever vaccine becomes available to them first. Now, you know Johnson & Johnson made a call to him. Told him, man, we're going to sue you so hard, hair going to grow on your head again. You big dummy. And then I can hear the White House. I can hear Biden. You know, he probably put on them glasses. He probably had on them Air Force glasses that he be wearing when he be chilling. You know how Biden be chilling sometimes. Probably pulled them glasses off. And then probably went back to that mindset when he was in that debate with Trump. And called Duggan on the phone and said, "Will you shut up, man?" Huh? Will you shut up? Huh? Or did or possibly maybe Duggan was starting his St. Patrick's Day celebration a little soon, huh? Maybe he had all top of the morning into you. Maybe he had got him a little bit of St. Patrick's Day do a little and did it a little too early, huh? Now, come on, dude. Duggan, you knew better than that, man. First of all, you a lawyer. You're supposed to know you can't make them kind of statements. Then you've been in politics from being the Wayne County prosecutor to working in McNamara's regime. Dude, you should have known better than that. Then also, because of Duggan making such a stupid statement, will the White House have to slap him on the wrist by slowing up some other stuff that may very well be coming to benefit the citizenry of Detroit because of Duggan's stupid statement? Could any of this stuff happen? It's a great possibility. So, for Duggan saying something that's stupid, this is your "you big dummy" moment. You's a big dummy, man. You can't say that kind of stuff, man. All right. Let me give you something we hadn't done in a couple weeks, and this is a positive story about a black man or a young black man. 11-year-old black student wins coding competition and beats 3,000 rivals from around the globe. Meet Dominic Darby, an 11-year-old student from St. Catherine, Jamaica. And that is he. Dominic has recently won the X Prize Connect Code Games competition after creating his own video game for the first time. He was one of only 17 winners out of the 3,000 people who joined the global competition last year. Around 70 participants were from Jamaica. Darby was named best in class, and he was given a $1,000 cash prize in the junior division. The competition was sponsored by the non-profit California-based X Prize in partnership with the video game developer Eline Media and supported by Endless Network, which aims to improve the lives through technology. Darby used MIT's Scratch coding software in creating his winning piece entitled How to Fall, wherein the game character moved through multiple levels while getting away from different obstacles. It took him several months to finish the game, which is the first ever game he created. His mother, Sheila Derby, said he first learned about the platform when he was just 6, when he attended a summer program held at the University of the West Indies. He's also partly self-taught as he enjoys reading books and watching YouTube tutorials about coding. Darby, who currently attends Wolmer's Preparatory School, also enjoys playing Minecraft and Roblox as well as chess and tennis. He plans to study computer science and work in the same field someday. And this was brought to you from blackbusiness.com. Young brother Dominic Darby. Our positive story about a black man. And also we have one from media mogul Byron Allen, also a Detroit native. He was born here. Byron Allen threatens to sue major brands over an ad allocation for black-owned media. Let me repeat that. Byron Allen threatens to sue major brands over ad allocation for black-owned media. In other words, folks won't spend money with the black TV stations. Byron Allen has threatened to take legal action against major corporations for their failure to significantly advertise with black-owned media companies. Last week, Allen, whose company Entertainment Studios owns the Griot, sent letters of intent to several major brands and their ad agencies that urged them to increase their purchase of ad space to black-owned entities by 2%. If they didn't, he'd maintain they'd see him in court. The billionaire activist and entrepreneur said he has engaged in conversations with CEOs and board chairs at several agencies and holding companies about more investment in black-owned media since last year. He said he has not seen any real progress. During the summer of 2020, many companies reacted to racial unrest and the evidence that the coronavirus pandemic was disproportionately affecting black people with comments to invest in black communities. However, evidence of action on their behalf has not yet been borne out. Further, Allen posits that firms who vow to work with more minority companies are meeting those needs not by the investment in business owned by black or people of color, but by women. We are only talking about what you do with black-owned media, and unfortunately, it is nearly extinct because of the racism on Madison Avenue, Allen says. According to Ad Age, Allen wants companies to catch up for what he calls years of neglect by demanding that major brands increase the cost to reach thousands of viewers, an industry standard known as CPMs. He is also encouraging brands to do sponsorships with black-owned media outlets and be willing to strike deals based on non-rating guarantees. In other words, some ad agencies will not advertise with you unless you can prove that you get certain ratings on your shows. That doesn't determine how many people are watching those shows. Because a lot of times, those rating systems have hurt many black programs. A lawsuit of this kind would not be the first for Allen. The media mogul settled a landmark discrimination case with Comcast and Charter Communications this year that went all the way to the Supreme Court. In that case, Allen used the argument of the Civil Rights Act of 1866 to argue that government and commercial contracts should be equitably afforded to African Americans as a means to ensure economic inclusion. The same case could be argued here. All right, so Byron Allen, again, taking folks who are mistreating or not sharing the wealth with black companies to task. So we give props to Byron Allen for that. Also, we have a newlywed family, or newlyweds. They skipped their honeymoon, and instead, they opened up a dollar store. And these are they. Instead of going on their honeymoon, they opened up a dollar store. Newlywed couple and business partners Antonio and Andrea Williams say they postponed their honeymoon because they wanted to immediately launch their first retail business, Tryon Dollar Store, based in Charlotte, North Carolina. The business fully opened about 2 months after their wedding. Immediately following their wedding on October of 2020, the Williams resumed their business plan. They cleverly decided to open a dollar store even during the pandemic, as cleaning products and other household items have become more essential than ever. Tryon Dollar Store opened in December of 2020 and instantly became a hit in their community. They surveyed nearby residents from several apartment complexes in their area so they would know what items to stock in the store. Now, that was real intelligent. However, they weren't able to anticipate the need for a much larger space for the store. Fortunately, the art gallery next door moved out, and they managed to leave the additional space and expand the store area from 1,400 square feet to 2,800 square feet. The couple is also very hands-on with the customer service, and they sometimes go from being owners and managers and sometimes employees, they said. But they still find time for themselves, often unwinding with a movie and singing karaoke while at home. You have to have the right partner who balances you out. One who you can collaborate with and have open dialogue with to bounce things off each other, where you can work seamlessly together day in and day out, Andrea told the Q City Metro. Before the pandemic, Antonio and Andrea also love traveling, and they are looking forward to having their honeymoon one day. They also plan to get on with another venture in real estate, and once they fully have established the Tryon Dollar Store. All right. And if you want to know more about the Tryon Dollar Store and you live in Charlotte, North Carolina, you can go to tryondollars.com. That's TRYON dollar.com. tryondollar.com. And that's in Charlotte, North Carolina. Another positive story, and this time about a couple, a black couple. All right. And one more we're going to give you on the positive tip. Maybe two more. We have Maya Shaka. Maya Shaka makes the NFL history books as the first black female referee. And this is Maya Shaka. Maya Shaka made NFL history as the first black woman to be named an official referee by the league. The Today Show reported that the Virginia Beach-based psych and health teacher has trained with the Football League since 2014. She was overjoyed to hear that her hard and effort landed her a job. Just because I've been at it for so long, and I just never thought the day would come, Shaka told the NBC Morning Show. Shaka got on the phone and to call about the exciting news on March 1st. It didn't really hit me until just now, she said in an interview with the Morning Show. When I saw the introduction, I'm like, this is really real, because this is just something that we're just always taught to work hard for. Sometimes we just take time to stop and smell the roses. The humble beauty called her new gig an honor. She expressed that the key to being a great referee was having patience, listening, and being confident to make the call. You're going to make mistakes, and it's not necessarily how many mistakes you make, but it's how you recover, Shaka said. Excuse me. The ardent football fan previously refereed college football games and worked on the sidelines at the XFL games. If you have a passion for something, or you have the drive for something, don't let it hold you back just because you think that something may give you some type of limitation, she says. Work hard and always, always, always follow your dream. Shaka is also the second woman in the NFL to become a referee. And this comes courtesy of Black Enterprise. Maya Shaka, the first black woman referee. And one more. Let's see if I can find that one on video as well. Yeah, this is going on. A lot of you probably heard about this one. 16-year-old young lady saves her best friend's life right after she just learned how to do CPR. So let's see if we can get that one for you. And like I say, this week's program, we're just mainly trying to see if we can give you some information on some of the stories you might have missed this week. You know? So, hold on. Here we go.
I just couldn't believe that just really just happened.
I don't remember what.
The same night these two best friends took this photo, something happened that sealed their bond for life. Toriel was driving with Azaria and other passengers when she says she was hit by another vehicle.
And I guess the other car was smoking, and they started screaming. It was like, it's about to blow up, it's about to blow up. I was almost all the way down the street. Like, I was trying to go away. And then that's when I turned around, and I didn't see Azaria with me. And I immediately ran back to the car as fast as I can, and I saw that she was unconscious, and she was not moving at all.
The day before, Toriel earned the CPR training certificate at Lakewood High School in Pinellas County, Florida.
and she didn't have the pulse. She was not breathing. So I immediately started doing CPR on her. She started moving on her own and breathing. So I knew that she was okay, and I was just doing what I knew what I had to do.
She says when paramedics arrived, she cried.
I just couldn't believe that just really just happened.
I don't remember what all happened. I don't remember the accident. I just remember when I got to the hospital.
Azaria has just a few bumps and bruises.
I wasn't shocked by her doing it because she always do stuff for me. She always have my back either way. It's deeper than a friendship. It's been deeper than that before this accident and all this happened. It just made me realize because if she wasn't there, I wouldn't be here today.
But Toriel says she doesn't consider herself a hero.
That's my friend, so I was gonna do anything I could have. She's always in my prayer. I always want my friends to have the world.
Toriel's teacher calls her an incredible person.
It's just one of the most amazing things. I mean, as a teacher, we hope all the time that somebody's listening, paying attention, and that they can find a way to take what they've learned in class into the real world.
The aspiring nurse is also compassionate, especially towards Azaria.
We already have been getting together because she really don't have a choice because I have to make sure she's okay.
Azaria says she'll take the CPR class next year. She says she would have done the same for her friend. This is Inside Edition Digital.
All right, courtesy of Inside Edition Digital. And as I show you the pictures, this young lady in the background here, she's the one that saved her best friend, who's right next to her, right after she learned CPR. All right, that's a good thing. So if your children have an opportunity to learn any of these things when they're in school, you should make sure that they get it, because you never know when it may come in handy. They had no idea or no way of knowing that they'd be involved in a car accident and that one of them would even need CPR that was in the car. So it's a good thing that young Zoria learned it. All props go out to that little sister for, hey, basically being a hero. You see? Those are the kind of things, the good stories, you see. So today, I've missed out on giving you a few of the stories like this over the last few weeks. So I wanted to make sure that this particular program, I gave you more so that I could make up for my faux pas. Huh? We're going to be doing a program coming up real soon on lobbying. I've already started doing the research and gathering the information. Because of this being a highly political climate, and over the next few years, it's going to be very important that a lot of these things are understood. So I'm going to do a program, or maybe even a couple programs, and we're going to break down lobbying so you'll understand how it works and possibly how you might even be able to get involved in it, that the community could get involved in getting some lobbyists to make sure that these politicians start working for us for a change. Because there are some lobbyists, the majority of the lobbyists are working for these major corporations. But there is a way to be able to get lobbyists to work for the community. The only thing is just paying the lobbyists. They don't care what they got to push. All they care about is that they get paid for pushing it. Now, on the other hand, these big corporations, they make sure that these politicians look out for their best interests, even if it's not in the interest of the communities where they have their said businesses at. So these things are necessary to understand. So we're going to be doing a program on that. And I want to remind you again, we have reggae artist O.C. Roberts is going to be live in studio with us next week. And also got to remind you that this program is being brought to you by RCE Notary, the mobile notary. That's RCE Notary, the mobile notary, the notary that comes to you. You need those papers notarized? Hey, RCE Notary. You want to make sure those documents are legit? RCE Notary. Want to make sure that that stamp is on there so that folks can't vamp you later? RCE Notary. 248-861-9212. That's how you get in touch with them. Do you have your pencil? You know, when you look at the Hodo Show and the other Viewpoint, you should keep your pencil around anyway, because it might be something that you really need to know about. Huh? Something you might really need to know about. So make sure. Keep a pencil whenever you watch the Hodo Show and the other Viewpoint. Never know when there's a number or some information you might want to write down. So RCE Notary, the mobile notary, the notary that will come to you, write this number down. 248-861-9212. That's 248-861-9212. 248-861-9212. Monday through Friday. Monday through Saturday. Give them an extra day. Monday through Saturday. 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. That's Monday through Saturday. 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday. 10 p.m. Or is it 10 a.m.? 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Don't want to go 10 p.m. to 6 p.m. That's a long time. But 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. RCE Notary. The mobile notary. The notary that comes to you. All right. As we continue with the positive news for this evening, because we always have plenty of time to give you that other stuff. We're going to give you some positive stuff. It says, Lansdowne Student Accepted into 18 colleges with $2 million in scholarships. A student from Lansdowne, Delaware County, located just outside of Philadelphia, has been accepted into 18 colleges and awarded nearly $2 million in college scholarships. Lalia Johnson was accepted into every single school which she applied to, and winning a $1.8 million in pledge funds for her studies. She said she decided to target so many schools to broaden her options and explore majors. And this is Ms. Lalia Johnson. You get a good look at her. Okay? Graduating from Monsignor Bonner and Archbishop Pendergast High School in Dexter Hill, Johnson plans to major in psychology. She had a 4.0 average for all 4 years of high school, and also participated in several extracurricular activities. I've been in the newspaper. I've been bowling, Johnson told local news outlet. I also had a job as well in my career. But when the pandemic hit, I had to leave my job, unfortunately. She plans to be a child psychologist. Last year, another team from the region was awarded $1.2 million in scholarships after graduating early from high school. Angelica Malone, a graduate of Delaware State University Early College High School in Dover, attributed her scholarship success to choosing schools that suited her needs versus prestigious Ivy League institutions. There are people with better scores than me and better GPAs, but I think I just applied to the right schools, Malone said. A lot of people want to go to Harvard, but they're not going to give you a full ride because it's so competitive. That's something to keep in mind now. A 2016 Money Magazine article noted that among the ways to win lots of college scholarship money are to apply to local scholarships, to write compelling personal essays, and to choose scholarships that may require a lot of upfront work. Scholarships with essays over 1,000 words often have fewer than 500 applicants. The article notes, compared to the 5,000 students who enter easier scholarships. As for Johnson, she is reportedly planning to choose a school in Pennsylvania to be close to her family. She is currently debating between Temple University and Westchester University and Newham University and Penn State University, or Newman rather. So, Miss Lilea Johnson, keep up the good work. $1.8 million in scholarship monies pledged to her. Very good. Also, have these two young brothers here that are twins who had been diagnosed as being dyslexic. And despite having dyslexia, these twin brothers earned over $2.5 million in scholarships. Bryn and Niall Wilson, twin brothers from Shreveport, Louisiana, have overcome the challenges of dyslexia and were offered over $2.5 million in college scholarships. The brothers, who graduated last year from Captain Shreve High School, had always done well in their math and science coursework, but they found their reading and social studies subjects challenging to them. When you have dyslexia, it's going to be harder to learn like everyone else does. We would have to study a lot longer, they told the WAFB. Because that's the station is there. They were grateful for the support of their parents, Delano and Sonia Wilson, and they able to continue working hard in school. They also actively played football. They managed to apply for different colleges and were accepted into more than a dozen, including Morehouse College, St. John's University, LaSalle University, Loyola University, Louisiana Tech University, and Barry University. At first, I didn't really think anything of it. Like, oh, it's just another school got accepted. I just really didn't think anything about it. The twins haven't yet decided where to attend college, but they are sure not to separate ways as they plan to both major in civil engineering in the same college. We're just average students. Anybody can do it if you work hard in the classroom. That one's brought to us courtesy of the blacknews.com. And these twins, Bryn and Niall Wilson, $2.5 million in scholarships they've earned. So, if two brothers with dyslexia can do it, there are no more excuses from anybody else. Huh? And we have this one. Black business owners in Chicago partner to help prevent local carjackings. Early Walker, the founder of the local towing service, is partnering with a black and minority-owned security agency to help stop carjackings. Early Walker, founder and owner of WW Towing, or W&W Towing, has partnered with Stephanie Coleman, alderman of Chicago's 16th Ward, and several black minority-owned security agencies to announce a special patrol of gas stations within Inglewood and beyond. This comes in response to a recent drastic increase in carjackings throughout Chicago and southern Cook County. It has become apparent that the recent increase in carjackings has triggered the mindsets of law-abiding citizens to proceed with caution while driving, Walker says. He adds, as a towing owner, I see firsthand of the volumes of residents who have been victimized. We often recover their vehicles and hear their accounts of terrifying instances of how they were victimized. Hopefully, our efforts will help curb this violent plague. The security firm that has been personally selected by Walker, or the security firms rather, that have been hand-selected by Walker, formulated a strategic plan that will allow their officers to provide 2 hours of monitoring of gas stations. It has been widely known that a significant number of carjackings occur at the gas stations. Women have been targeted most. I'm grateful to Mr. Walker and the security firms for once again assisting me in keeping Inglewood safe. Aggravated carjackings are punishable by up to 6 to 30 years in prison in the state of Illinois. But there's currently a high bar for prosecutors to prove, which makes today's action by Mr. Walker that much more imperative, says Alderman Coleman. The Citgo gas station, located at 59th Street and Ashland Avenue, was the unfortunate scene of the carjacking of a woman on Christmas morning of 2020. The victim of the incident was also present at the press conference to publicly express her thoughts concerning this violent pandemic. Mr. Walker, Alderman Coleman, and the security guard firm owners publicly detailed their strategic plans. For now, designated gas stations are being monitored by the security firms between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. daily. The group is publicly encouraging women to pump their gas at these specific gas stations during the monitored time. There's also a strong presence of security cars and employees available to the media. This also comes from blacknews.com, and giving props to those brothers in Chi-Town who decided to step it up. And these are they, or some of them, anyway. And want to give props to them for stepping it up to try to halt the carjackings in the near Chicago area. Where are we? What time is it? Time is just a ticking. Keeps ticking on. See, what else do we have here to play for you? What is this? Let's see. Yeah, I want you to hear this as well, because the whole country has been mourning the murders of the Asian women and the gentleman in Georgia by the maniac who went on the rampage earlier in the week. So there was a hearing before Congress that had already been scheduled prior to that mishap happening, and it was to deal with the violence and discrimination against Asians. So let me let you hear just a slight bit of that hearing that they had earlier this week, so that you'll be able to be in the know about what's going on in the Asian community. And a lot of people may say, well, Hodo, why are you talking about Asians? Because people of color throughout America exclusively are going to have to get on the same page. And also, folks who are not of color are going to have to straighten themselves out and start rectifying their own communities so that they can quit disrespecting the communities of color. Now, some of y'all say, well, black folks been, yeah, they have. the Asian community went through a lot of hell here in America too. So I'm not going to merely just deal with black folks, because I've said time and time again, it's not just about black or white, it's about what's right. And it's not right that anybody has to be disrespected anywhere. Huh? Injustice is injustice. It don't matter whether it's between black and white folks or whoever. Injustice is injustice. Now, some of y'all might not like that I said it that way, but get over it. It is what it is. All right, let's see.
Civil rights and civil liberties will come to order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare a recess to the subcommittee at any time. I welcome everyone to today's hearing on discrimination and violence against Asian Americans. Before we begin this meeting, I would like to ask that we have a moment of silence in memory of the individuals tragically killed, murdered in Atlanta, Georgia. Thank you. I'd like to remind members that we have established an email address and distribution list dedicated to circulating exhibits, motion, murdered in Atlanta, Georgia. Thank you. I'd like to remind members that we have established an email address and distribution list dedicated to circulating exhibits, motions, or other written materials that members may want to offer as part of our hearing today. If you'd like to submit those materials, the site is judiciarydocs@mail.house.gov. We will distribute them to members and staff as quickly as possible. Also ask unanimous consent that our Judiciary Committee colleagues, Representatives Jha, Paul, and Lou, participate in today's hearing. Hearing no objection, I welcome them to our subcommittee. You'll be able to question our witnesses if they are yielded time by subcommittee members. Finally, I would ask all members, both those in person and those appearing remotely, to mute your microphones when you're not speaking. This will help prevent feedback, other technical issues, and unmute yourself when you are recognized. I'll now recognize myself for an opening statement. While there's still many details to be learned about Tuesday's horrific shootings in Atlanta that left 8 people dead, 6 of them reportedly of Asian descent, one thing is certain. For many Asian Americans, Tuesday's shocking events felt like the inevitable culmination of a year in which there were nearly 3,800 reported incidents of anti-Asian hate incidents that grew increasingly more violent over time as the COVID-19 pandemic worsened, and some people wrongly blamed Asian Americans, or implied such by calling it the China virus. These incidents include cases of verbal harassment, being spat at, slapped in the face, lit on fire, slashed with a box cutter, or shoved violently to the ground. And that number of reported incidents is just likely the tip of the iceberg. I want to make clear that all Asian Americans who are understandably feeling hurt and afraid right now and wondering whether anyone else in America cares, that Congress sees you, we stand with you, and we'll do everything in our power to protect you. Anti-Asian hate did not begin with the COVID-19 pandemic and will not end when the pandemic is over. All the pandemic did was exacerbate latent anti-Asian prejudices that have long and ugly history in America. It also provided an excuse for some to act on those prejudices. In fact, there have been discrimination against lots of people in this country, and all of that has been exacerbated. But the Asian situation has been the most extreme. Pandemics, wars, geopolitical tensions, and economic competition, and the fear and resentment that these situations create have historically provided the conditions for anti-Asian racism and xenophobia to take root, often leading to tragic consequences for Asian Americans. For example, social and economic resentment against Chinese laborers in the 1800s led to the enactment of Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, which barred nearly all immigration from China. And the 1924 Immigration Act effectively barred immigration from all Asian countries. In 1942, the United States government committed the most sweeping violation of civil liberties in American history, other than slavery itself, when it ordered the forced internment of 120,000 Japanese Americans, many of them second and third generation Americans, during the Second World War, based not on any legitimate national security concerns, but on the racist and xenophobic assumption that Americans of Japanese ancestry would be disloyal. In 1982, Chinese-American Vincent Chen was beaten to death by 2 white auto workers because his attackers thought he was Japanese and therefore responsible for the decline of U.S. automobile industry. On September 15, 2001, Balbir Singh Sodhi, a Sikh gas station owner in Arizona, was murdered by a man who blamed him for the 9/11 terrorist attacks. To this list, we now add the most recent victims of anti-Asian hate, as Asian Americans are wrongfully blamed for the COVID-19 pandemic. While many of the recent anti-Asian incidents may not meet legal definition of hate crime, these attacks nonetheless create an unacceptable environment of fear and terror in Asian American communities. Attacks like the one on 84-year-old Visa Ratanapakdi on January 28 of this year was on a walk in his neighborhood. He was walking in his neighborhood, was violently slammed to the ground. He died a few days later from the brain trauma that he sustained. I'd now like to play a video of that attack caught by a nearby surveillance camera. Sadly, this incident was one of several recent ones that where elderly Asian Americans were similarly knocked violently to the ground. Left unchecked, racist attitudes stoked by racist rhetoric can have deadly consequences for innocent people, as we've just witnessed in that sad clip. In such a fraught time as the ones we're living in, it is incumbent on all public officials, elected or otherwise, and public figures to speak out against the irrational hatreds and prejudices that could overtake society in the face of a national emergency. In short, words matter. Indeed, the wrong words can be very harmful. Leaders who promote stereotypes to use rhetoric aimed at a particular ethnic or racial group can cause increases in levels of discrimination or violence directed against that group. When politicians use terms like China virus or Kung flu or refer to all Asian Americans. Used the right way, however, words from our leaders can help calm fear. Thankfully, we have 2 panels of witnesses who can help show us the way forward and eagerly await their testimony. As best we can tell, the lack of social problems are being blamed on an Asian country and, by unfair extension, Asian Americans. We can't ever forget Asian Americans, not Asians, Asian Americans. Clearly, more work needs to be done. Let us use this hearing as a chance to do better. Now I'd like to recognize
All right. So that's the first thing. That was the intro to the hearing that was the other day. And he gave a short synopsis of some of the history of what's going on in the Asian community. But it no way scratches the surface of what they've gone through. And again, across the board, we need to understand some of this so that way the insensitivity that many times, especially in the black community, if it didn't happen to us, sometimes we are kind of null to that. And the other community, the Caucasian community, in many cases, they are null and void of it anyway, even though they were the ones that did it in most cases. But there are many cases of black folks that say some stuff to Asians, as well as there are Asians who provoke black folks to saying stuff to them. But in this particular case, the history of what's been going on is necessary that everybody understand, so that we can put this thing in context as we see what's been going on over the last week or so, and over the last few months, or even the last few years, since the Republicans have had a majority over the last 4 years, and the Trump rhetoric has persuaded those who ain't too bright to continue with the racist format that America has drawn out for centuries now. So let's go back. And continue listening as they get ready to bring other folks in to the conversation.
Asian Americans were similarly knocked out.
All right, it's taking them a little longer to get situated. Again, this was a live hearing, and they were having a lot of computer issues in the Congress now. So if Congress can have computer issues, anybody can. Let's see when we can see if I can speed it up.
Which passed the House last fall.
There's another one.
And that's why it's important to pass critical legislation like Congressmember Barr's No Hate Act.
This is the Chicago Transit Authority.
All right, let's see where we are. Come on, y'all got to get it together, Congress. Yeah, they're having a lot of technical issues that particular day. They were. So let me see if I can fast forward to some.
Capable of growth. That this legislative body will no longer sit in silence while our communities suffer racism and hatred. Now is the time to recommit to moving forward with a shared vision for our future based upon basic human dignity. Again, I thank the chairman and ranking member, and I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Matsui, for that history and that testimony. Our next witness is Representative Judy Chu. Congressman Chu represents the 27th Congressional District of California, which includes Pasadena Polytechnic School and the San Gabriel Valley, in that order. She's been a member of Congress since 2009. Among other things, she's chair of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus. Congressman Chu, you are recognized for 5 minutes. Congressman Chu, if you need to unmute. Unmute.
Thank you so much.
We hear you.
Thank you, Chairman Adler, Ranking Member Jordan, Subcommittee Chairman Cohen, Ranking Member Johnson, and other distinguished members of the committee for the opportunity to testify before you today. It is with a heavy heart that we are here today, still shocked and heartbroken about the murder of 8 in Georgia, including 6 Asian American women by a gunman who targeted 3 Asian businesses, the first one being Young's Asian Massage, then driving 27 miles to 2 other Asian spas. His targets were no accident, and what we know is that this day was coming. And because of crimes like this, I, as chair of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, or CAPAC, urge the committee to undertake this hearing because the Asian American community has reached a crisis point that cannot be ignored. Since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, Asian Americans have been terrified by the alarming surge in anti-Asian bigotry and violence we have witnessed across our nation. In fact, it was over 1 year ago that CAPAC first began to sound the alarm bells about the anti-Asian discrimination we were beginning to see due to misinformation and stigma that wrongly associated Asian Americans with the coronavirus. But what started out last January as dirty looks and verbal assaults has escalated to physical attacks and violence against innocent Asian Americans. And these attacks have increasingly become more deadly. Just as many Asian Americans were preparing for the Lunar New Year last month, we saw a surge in anti-Asian violence. Many of the victims have been older and vulnerable, like Bisha Ratanapakdi, an 84-year-old Thai man in San Francisco, who was killed in an unprovoked assault while on his morning walk. In New York, 61-year-old Noel Quintana's face was slashed from ear to ear with a box cutter in the subway, requiring 100 stitches. In Oakland's Chinatown, a camera captured a 91-year-old man being thrown to the ground by an assailant. In my own congressional district, a Chinese American man was attacked at a bus stop in Rosemead with his own cane, causing him to lose part of his finger. This has become almost a daily tragedy and has had a chilling effect on our community. Today, we find that there have been nearly 3,800 anti-Asian hate crimes and incidents in just the year alone. They were stoked by the words of former President Donald Trump, who sought to shift blame and anger away from his own flawed response to the coronavirus. He used racial slurs like Wuhan virus, China plague, and Kung flu, despite the fact that the CDC and the World Health Organization warned not to associate the virus with a specific ethnicity, country, or geographic region due to the stigma it causes. Immediately, we in KPAC took Donald Trump on about this racist terminology. We issued statements, held press conferences, and sent letters. But our pleas and the guidance from experts were ignored. Instead, he doubled down on using these slurs, directing more hate and blame at the Asian American community. Over the past year, hostile anti-Asian COVID comments on Twitter increased by 900%. And we saw a nearly 150% surge in anti-Asian hate crimes in major U.S. cities. And even though Donald Trump is no longer president, I believe the most recent round of anti-Asian attacks are the aftermath of 1 year of hateful attacks and 4 years of ugly comments about immigrants and people of color. That's why I'm so grateful that we have a new president, Joe Biden, who is working to stop these attacks, not incite them. Within his first week in President Biden issued a presidential memorandum to combat and condemn xenophobia against AAPIs and ensure that the Department of Justice works with our community to address these surging hate crimes. But Congress must do its part as well. That's why KPAC pushed for legislation such as Congresswoman Grace Meng's resolution to condemn anti-Asian sentiment related to COVID-19, which passed the House last fall. And that's why it's important to pass critical legislation like Congressmember Barr's No Hate Act and Congresswoman Meng's COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act that will help us to better track and respond to hate crimes and incidents against Asian Americans. We're calling for a national day to speak out against Asian hate on March 26th. It is time that we continue to push back against xenophobia every time it rears its ugly head. Asian Americans must not be used as scapegoats in times of crisis. Lives are at stake, and it's critical that Congress takes bold action to address this pandemic of discrimination and hate. I yield back.
Thank you, Congressman Chu. I remember the smog in the San Gabriel Valley. Our next witness is Senator Tammy Duckworth, and after her, we'll hear from Representative Young Kim. Senator Duckworth represents the state of Illinois in the United States Senate, first elected in 2016. She previously served in the United States House of Representatives, and she represented the 8th Congressional District of Illinois for 2 terms. She has an outstanding communications team and an outstanding record in Congress. Senator Duckworth, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it was a pleasure to serve alongside you previously in the House. It's good to see you up on the dais today. Thank you for this hearing. In New York, as we've heard, an 89-year-old was slapped, and in California, a 91-year-old was pushed to the ground. In the middle of a park, a little girl was shoved off her bike, and in the middle of a city sidewalk, a little boy watched as his father was beaten up. Families have had rocks thrown at them, nurses have been spit on, heroes, frontline workers, hospital staff have been blamed for COVID-19, and they've been denied service, treated as other than, as less than, simply because they are members of the AAPI community. And now, less than 48 hours ago, 6 members of the Asian American community were murdered in Atlanta, Georgia, another unspeakable tragedy after a year of unfathomable cruelty. There's nothing we can say today that will piece back together the shattered lives of the victims' loved ones. There's nothing we can do that will give them the solace they deserve, nothing we can provide that will even begin to make sense of this senseless tragedy. But what we can say, and should say clearly, unambiguously, is that blaming the AAPI community for a public health crisis is racist and wrong. And continuing to treat our fellow Americans as others only further divides our country at a time when we should be pushing, pulling, tugging at our nation with all our might until it lives up to its founding ideals of equality and justice for all. Unfortunately, this type of prejudice is far from new. It's a similar brand of discrimination to the one that marred some of our country's darkest days and toughest fights, from segregation to immigration. As Congressman Latsi has mentioned, it's in a similar vein to what was witnessed in World War II, as our nation incarcerated Japanese Americans because of their heritage and trapped thousands of families like Congresswoman Matsui's, even as their loved ones sacrificed everything on the war front to defend our nation overseas. Fortunately, the United States government recognized that this type of bigotry was un-American. Yet, the risk of repeating past grave errors is real and chilling. That's why I introduced the Korematsu Takai Civil Liberties Protection Act, which would be a first step towards safeguarding freedom and establishing a clear statutory prohibition against un-American policies that seek to imprison or otherwise detain American citizens on the basis of who they are rather than what they have done. And as the daughter of an American Vietnam veteran and an immigrant with Chinese Thai heritage, I am deeply committed to supporting our community's fight against discrimination. I applaud the efforts of this subcommittee to raise awareness of this crisis and to discuss a plan to advance civil rights for Asian Americans and protect the well-being of all of our families. You know, the American story as we know it would not exist without the strength of the AAPI community. Quite literally, Asian Americans helped build this country. With their bare hands and bent backs, they laid the railroad tracks that connected us from coast to coast. They tilled the fields and started the businesses that picked up the rifles necessary to develop and defend this nation that we all love. And today, even as we face so much bigotry and violence, our community is helping to keep the country running. So I just want to take a minute to thank all the incredible, heroic frontline workers who are getting our nation through this crisis. From the doctors and the nurses risking their own lives to try to save the lives of strangers, to the cashier at the market who's helping our families stay fed, from janitors sweeping up hospital rooms at night to the teachers patiently helping our kids learn their ABCs over Zoom. I hope you know that we see you and we see your sacrifices and that we are forever in your debt. We'll never be able to fully express our gratitude for all of the APIs on the front lines, but every hour of every day, I'm going to keep trying because that's the least that these folks deserve. So I want to say thank you one more time for everything that they do. And going forward, I hope that all Americans will speak up discrimination a thing of the past. Please know that we have so much work ahead of us, and I thank this committee for holding this hearing to shed a light on this very, very serious issue that will divide our nation and make us weaker, not stronger. With that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. It's nice to see you and have you back in the House again. California, which includes the northern parts of Orange County. Not sure if she's got the Big A in Anaheim, the ballpark, or the Disney World, or the Knott's Berry Farm, or those places.
We're holding this hearing today on a very important topic that has been prevalent in our national conversation, but one that is very, very personal to me as an Asian American. I represent California's 39th Congressional District. This is one of the most diverse districts in the country, and it's also a home to a vibrant Asian American community. My district is truly a representation of America and what makes our country great. Asian Americans have and continue to make countless contributions to communities across the country and right here in the halls of Congress. Since the beginning of COVID-19, we have increasingly seen Asian Americans becoming targets of hate across the nation. With more than 3,000 hate crimes against the Asian American and Pacific Islander community, those crimes have been reported nationwide, with an increased number of attacks against seniors. This week, we saw senseless violence in Atlanta that took the lives of 6 Asian American women. While the investigation is ongoing and we wait for more information, This comes during a time when violence and attacks against Asian Americans are on the rise. The hate, the bias, and the attacks that we've seen against the Asian American community are unacceptable, and they must be stopped. This is wrong, and it has no place in our political discourse, and it's contrary to the values that America stands for. This should not have to be said, but I want to be very clear. No American of any race or ethnic group is responsible for the COVID-19 pandemic. The virus does not discriminate. It affects everyone. We must come together as Americans, not just to fight COVID-19, but also to stand against the rise of hate and discrimination against the AAPI community and any other group of Americans. We also cannot forget that discrimination we've seen against the AAPI community is not limited to the violence and attacks. I hope we can look at the nation's elite universities and other institutions of learning. We have seen institutions discriminating against Asian Americans in their admissions process in order to deny them the entry. Discrimination is wrong and goes against our fundamental American values that we hold dear. In America, we value the individual, and we believe that people deserve to be judged on their merits and not penalized because of their heritage, race, or background. These are the values that my family and countless of immigrants came here for. When our country seems more divided than ever, we should work together to unify our country and ensure future generations of Americans, regardless of their background, have the same opportunity to access the promise of America. No matter our race or background, we are all Americans. Asian Americans are Americans. As an Asian American and a member of Congress, I feel a duty to speak out. So I stand with the AAPI community today and always. So I want to thank you for allowing me to speak on this very, very important issue. And I yield back the balance of my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Kim. Our next witness is Representative Michelle Parks Steele. Congressman Steele represents the 48th Congressional District in California, which includes other portions of Orange County. She was first elected in 2020. Congressman Steele, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Steve Cohen and Ranking Member Chip Roy, thank you for holding this important conversation today. It has been heartbreaking to see the rise in anti-Asian American hate and harassment over the last year. As we will hear today from our witnesses, and we've been hearing from our witnesses, hate against the Asian American community is not new. According to Sean Wu, a former federal prosecutor, violence against Asian Americans have been under-scrutinized, under-prosecuted, and often condoned. This is a long, sad history of intolerance and hate directed at our community.
Now, a lot of you might say, Hodo, well, when you played that stuff on reparations and them other folks was talking, you paused and kept talking and saying and giving commentary. Yes, I did. Do you know why? Because those folks were saying some stuff that didn't make sense. And that's another reason why I'm letting you hear this, to show you how when folks deal with their own people, other folks besides black folks, deal with their issues, they don't have an Asian version of a Sambo stepping up in there trying to throw a monkey wrench at what they're trying to do for their own people. But we, as black people, in many cases, we can't seem to do anything without a Sambo or a Negro or Auntie Thomasina or somebody coming in there trying to dismantle that which is in our benefit. And the reason I'm letting you hear this continuously is because they aren't doing this. And also, you have an opportunity to see that some of the trials and tribulations that people of color go through in America are one and the same. All right, I continue.
In the last year, almost 4,000 incidents of verbal harassment, physical assault, and discrimination have been reported. California is at the top of the list with 44% of all incidents reported happening in my home state. New York is second on the list, making up 13% of all the incidents reported. 68% of these incidents and crimes were targeted towards Asian American women. This has to stop. When I was chair of the Orange County Board of Supervisors, I introduced a resolution that called for tolerance and compassion towards all residents and condemned discrimination against the AAPI community. I was proud this year to introduce a similar resolution in Congress with other Orange County Congresswoman Katie Porter. That's because combating hate is not a partisan issue. We can all agree that violence against any community should never be tolerated. As a first-generation Korean American who is now serving her community in the halls of Congress, this is my American dream. I want future generations of Americans to know they can achieve anything in this great country. That's why I also like to use some of my time today to talk about the discrimination that the AAPI community is experiencing in our nation's education system. It is one of the reasons why my colleague, Representative Kim, and I joined Ranking Member Jordan and Subcommittee Ranking Member Johnson to request the President of Yale University to testify at today's hearing. Last year, the Department of Justice filed a case alleging that Yale University was discriminating against Asian American and white applicants. But the Biden administration dropped the suit last month. This is totally wrong and sets a dangerous precedent. In 1996, I supported and campaigned for California's Proposition 209, which banned racial preferences in public hiring, education, and contracting. It was modeled after the Civil Rights Act. Before Prop 209 was passed, the four-year graduation rate for underrepresented racial minorities in the University of California system was 31.3%. By 2014, that has increased to 51.1%. The six-year graduation rate is even better, increasing from 66.5% in 1998 to 75.1% in 2013. Last year in California, Democrats introduced Proposition 16 to bring back racial preferences in hiring, contracting, and our education system. Californians overwhelmingly rejected it. As a new member of Congress and immigrant to this country, we should be encouraging all students and young people to succeed, especially in our education system. Discrimination is against the fundamental value of American culture, and that includes discrimination against the AAPI community in the halls of our schools and universities. This is wrong. This type of behavior is only hurting future generations. We should be working together to stop this discrimination and hate in its tracks, and to encourage the next generation to achieve their own American dream. I thank the committee for the opportunity to testify and share this with you today. I yield back.
Thank you, Congresswoman Steele. Thank you very much. Final witness on this first panel is the Honorable Representative Grace Ming. Congressman Ming represents the 6th Congressional District.
You call it success. We call it Kent State. With more than 10,000...
All right. see if we can skip forward and get into some of the other folks who testify. And because I want you to hear Daniel Day Kim, actor Daniel Day Kim, because he had quite a bit to say. And I think that we definitely want to hear from him. And this is actually a pretty long hearing. It's about 50-some minutes long, and I'm not going to play all of it this evening. We don't have the time to play it all anyway. But definitely would like to get to Daniel Day Kim. That's what I'm trying to find. And there's quite a few people that spoke. But anyway, let's see where we are here.
Flew from his home in New York to San Francisco last month, meeting with local leaders of all races on the ground to learn how to turn his outrage into action.
You don't fight racism with racism. Yes. You fight racism with solidarity.
Montana says she is trying to find hope. It isn't easy.
I've been outside with the kid, and then I've been attacked.
District of the Empire State, New York, includes Flushing, Bayside, Fresh Meadows, and other portions of northeastern Queens. She's been in Congress since 2013.
Thank you to the Ranking Member Johnson, and the other members of the committee. Really appreciate the opportunity to testify before all of you today. And I really appreciate the powerful words from Representative Mang and the other TPEC members as to why we are here today. When I agreed to testify at this hearing, no one could have imagined that this would come 2 days after the horrific shooting in Atlanta, Georgia. And so I also want to take a moment to recognize and honor the victims and their families and the suffering that they are going through at this moment. And to remember that we must center ourselves in the Atlanta community and all of the local communities that have been affected during this past year with respect to the anti-Asian violence. Look, for a year now, Asian Americans have been fighting two viruses, the COVID-19 pandemic affecting all of us, as well as this virus of racism. Asian Americans, like all Americans, have suffered the economic and health consequences of COVID-19. But at the same time, Asian Americans have been at the front lines as essential workers in grocery stores, in delivery trucks, in custodial services, as well as in health professions. Unfortunately, Asian Americans have also been fighting this second virus, this virus of racism. We have long struggled for visibility and equity, and now our communities are faced with this additional physical and mental harm that is arising out of the COVID-19 pandemic. As Ms. Kulkarni will testify, web-based self-reporting tools have recorded a tremendous increase in the number of anti-Asian hate that we have seen this past year. A Pew report from last year confirmed what that data shows, that a majority of Asian Americans say it is more common for people to blame Asians for COVID-19 and have expressed insensitive and completely inappropriate views about Asian Americans than before COVID-19. An Ipsos survey shows the same thing, where over 30% of the American population say that they have witnessed harassment or blame of the Asian community for COVID-19, and 60% of the Asian American population show that this was similar behavior that they were seeing. So these fears are real. And the other thing is the impact on the Asian American communities is clear with respect to their businesses. As noted in a report by McKinsey & Company, misguided fears of the virus effectively shuttered businesses in many Asian American cultural districts a full month before lockdowns began nationwide. Our organization and others started talking about this issue in late January when we saw this happening. And districts during that time when we saw this happening, and to say that it was still safe to go there before the lockdowns. In New York, as demonstrated by a study by our community partner, Asian American Federation, there has been record job losses for the Asian American community. In New York, there was a 6,000% increase in unemployment benefit applications from February through June of 2020. And Asian Americans suffered the largest increase in unemployment, going from 3% in February 2020 to over 25%. Now look, Asian American racism is rooted in two very dangerous stereotypes, that of the perpetual foreigner and that of the model minority. The perpetual foreigner suggests that we can be here and we can be born here and we can live here as long as we want, but we are still seen as foreigners. We are still seen as the other, not to be trusted and to be feared. On the flip side of that stereotype is the so-called model minority, to suggest that Asian Americans are held up as the good people of color when it is convenient, to plant seeds of division within allied communities of color. And here I will call out people that try to use affirmative action as a wedge to drive between Asian Americans and other communities of color. That model minority myth hides the complexities of our community and the economic disparities that exist among Asian Americans. Even as the COVID-19 pandemic recedes, we must remember that anti-Asian racism is likely to continue. We do have legitimate concerns and geopolitical differences with the Chinese government and the Chinese Communist Party, but that is likely to remain for the foreseeable future. But if we are not careful, those differences will have consequences on our Asian American community, and we can expect a backlash against our community. We've seen that happen with the Japanese American community in World War II. We've seen that happen with the Arab, Middle Eastern, Muslim, and South Asian American community after 9/11, and we saw that happen with the murder of Vincent Chin in 1982. We have to do better than that. We have to have the proper nuance to call out xenophobia, racism, whenever it occurs against our community. And we must call out this out to stop this cycle of violence. It is only then that we will stop seeing Asian Americans as this perpetual foreigner to be feared and come up to a better place in addressing this racism. Thank you very much. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Yang. Our next witness is Manju Shah Kulkarni. She's Executive Director of the Asian Pacific Policy and Planning Council, a coalition of over 40 community-based organizations that serve and represent the 1.5 million Asian American and Pacific Islanders in Los Angeles County. She's also a co-founder of Stop AAPI Hate, an online self-reporting and tracking tool launched on March 19, 2020, in response to a sharp rise in anti-Asian xenophobia and bigotry resulting from the references to the COVID-19 pandemic's provenance. She received her JD from Boston University School of Law and her BA from Duke University. Ms. Kulkarni, you are now recognized for 5 minutes. Ms. Kulkarni, did you hear me? You're recognized for 5 minutes. You may need... We'll be back.
Looks like they took a congressional recess because they're having problems with their system. So I'm going to have to fast forward past there slightly so I can get to the...
Testing.
This is John Yang. I can hear you.
Great. We're back. Recess is over. No more milk and cookies. Ms. Kulkarni, you're recognized for 5 minutes. Unmute.
Thank you, Chairman, Ranking Member, and distinguished members of the subcommittee for the opportunity to testify before you today. Go back to Wuhan and take the virus with you. You are the reason for the coronavirus. Damn, another Asian riding with me. Hope you don't have COVID. These are but a few examples of what Asian Americans have experienced over the course of the last year, alongside with refusal of service, workplace discrimination, and sadly now homicide. For that reason, on March 19th, 2020, my organization, Asian Pacific Policy and Planning Council, in conjunction with Chinese for Affirmative Action and San Francisco State University's Asian American Studies Department, launched Stop AAPI Hate. In the past 11 months, we have received almost 3,800 self-reported incidents of bias and discrimination from all 50 states and the District of Columbia, making Stop AAPI Hate the nation's leading aggregator of Asian American hate. From our analysis, the following trends have emerged. 68% of incidents involve verbal harassment, 20% involve avoidance or shunning, 11% physical assault, and 9% civil rights violations, including refusal of service, vandalism, workplace discrimination, and discrimination in housing. The vast majority do not involve a hate crime. Businesses, including grocery stores, pharmacies, and big box retail, are the primary site of discrimination. This is followed by public streets and public parks. The fact that so many incidents take place at businesses is especially concerning, given that retail venues sell goods necessary for daily living, essential during a pandemic. Given that 35% of incidents occur in public spaces is also worrisome. These figures give credence to the anxiety felt by AAPIs that purchasing food, refilling prescriptions, or simply going on a walk might leave them vulnerable to being attacked. Our data indicates that especially vulnerable populations, including women, youth, and seniors, have reported experiencing anti-Asian hate incidents at significant rates. As has been noted, 68% of incident reports come from women. This is perhaps to be expected given the lessons learned from the Me Too movement and a survey of Stop Street Harassment, which found that 81% of women experience street harassment in their daily lives. While Chinese Americans have often been the explicit target of perpetrators, they make up only 42% of individuals who reported to our site. 15% identify as Korean Americans, 9% as Vietnamese, and 8% as Filipino American. We have also received reports from South Asian Americans as well as Pacific Islanders and others, evidencing the fact that Asian Americans across ethnicities are experiencing hate and racism today with our Pacific Islander sisters and brothers. Sadly, the 3,800 reported to Stop AAPI hate represent only a fraction of what has happened in this country. The widespread nature of anti-Asian hate is confirmed by a study by the Pew Research Center released last July that found that 3 in 10 Asian Americans experience racist jokes and slurs. Similarly, a poll by the Center for Public Integrity found that 60% of Asian Americans have witnessed someone blaming our community for COVID-19. Before I close, I want to acknowledge the tremendous mobilization done by Asian American groups in Georgia in response to the violence there and read a portion of their statement. During this time of broader crisis and trauma in our Asian American communities, we must be guided by a compass of community care that prioritizes assessing and addressing our community's immediate needs, including in-language support for mental health, legal, employment, and immigration services. We must stand firm in decrying misogyny, systemic violence, and white supremacy. In addition to sharing our data and the statement from Georgia advocates, I want to share the fact that we have been developing resources for community members who experience incidents of hate and providing direct assistance through local networks. We are also closely working with local, state, and federal policymakers to address the hate incidents that have occurred and seek to prevent additional incidents from taking place in the future. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I look forward to taking any questions.
Thank you very much, and you were perfect on the 5 minutes. Our next witness is Erica Lee. She's a Regents Professor of History and Asian American Studies and the Director of the Immigration.
Americans believe the deceptive model minority stereotype, portraying Asian Americans only as success stories, proving that AAPIs do indeed experience structural racism and institutionalized discrimination remains a persistent challenge. The last time, and seemingly the only other time in our country's history that Congress has held hearings on anti-Asian racism was 34 years ago before this committee. Over 20 million in number, Asian Americans are now the fastest growing racial group in the United States. We are your constituents, but we are in crisis from the multiple and disproportionate effects of the pandemic on our diverse AAPI communities. U.S. citizens are being told to go back to their own countries. Nurses and doctors on the front lines are subjected to racist tirades. As we've seen in Atlanta, Asian-owned businesses and workers are being attacked, and all of this violence especially targets women. Like all Americans, AAPIs are struggling with the public health crisis and the shuttered economy. that we also have to worry about being attacked or harassed in our own neighborhoods makes our pandemic experience even more difficult. Congress needs to act definitively and immediately to address the enduring problem of anti-Asian racism in the U.S. The act leaders to condemn racism in all of its forms, invest in AAPI communities, and support individuals who've experienced race-based violence. We cannot afford to wait another 34 years for Congress to act. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Lee. Our next witness is Charles Lehman. Mr. Lehman is a fellow with the Manhattan Institute, working primarily on the policing and
making underinformed decisions. In particular, we cannot discuss these offenses without highlighting the past year's violent crime rate. Criminologist Jeff Asher has estimated that 2020 saw the largest one-year spike in homicides on record, as murder increased by more than 30% in nearly 40 major cities. New data indicate the trend has persisted into early 2021. That pattern appears in cities where Asian residents are being attacked. In San Francisco, homicide was up 17%. In New York, homicides rose 40%, while shootings nearly doubled. In Oakland, 2020 saw the highest homicide rate in 8 years, and the city's on track for a worse 2021. With 157 dead, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution called 2020 the city's deadliest year in decades. That violence is a product of three Roman criminals. Carl Chan, head of Oakland's Chinatown Chamber of Commerce, describes how, quote, businesses are so fearful they prefer to close early. We also have many juveniles driving around Chinatown and carrying guns, so they're also hurting people before they're being robbed. This is description not of hate crimes, but of out-and-out lawlessness. This behavior seems obviously tied to recent political hostility to the police. Many cities have yielded to activist demands that they slash police budgets and cut public safety services. Bigotry may have played a role in these offenses, but changing the hearts and minds of bigots is far harder from a policymaker's perspective than preventing bigotry-driven crimes. If anything is to blame for the terror now plaguing Asian Americans, it's public officials' dereliction of their duty to preserve public safety. I urge the members of the committee to advocate a restoration of public safety by pushing back on anti-police rhetoric and by supporting more federal funding for police. This is the...
Thank you, Mr. Lehman. Our next witness is with us here in person. That's a nice exception. Nice for you to be here. Mr. Winkong Fa. Mr. Fa is an attorney with the Pacific Legal Foundation, litigating cases focused on free speech and equality before the law. He receives his JD from the University of Michigan, not in the NCAA tournament, I think. Maybe they are, I don't know. And a master's, they are in the tournament, aren't they? Yeah, and a master's degree in political philosophy from the London School of Economics and a BA from the University of Texas, Dallas. Mr. Fa, you recognize for 5 minutes, sir.
Chairman, Ranking Member, thank you for inviting me to testify today. Before I begin, I want to say that I'm saddened by the violence committed in Georgia on Tuesday. I express my heartfelt condolences to the families of the victims. I never could have imagined being here today when I boarded a flight from Beijing to San Francisco 25 years ago. I knew 2 words of English when I got to America: banana, which I likely learned on the plane, and goodbye, which my grandmother taught me in Beijing as she dropped me off at the bus stop every Sunday. Since then, I became the first person in my family to receive a law degree, and I won the first case I litigated before the Supreme Court in June 2018. A few hours after I got the decision in the Supreme Court case, I went to take a citizenship test in front of an immigration officer, and I laughed when he asked me how many justices there were on the Supreme Court. I have since become a proud citizen of the United States. I am here today to say that racial discrimination is wrong, but when it comes to Asian Americans in education, far too many in our government condone discrimination. This is something I've experienced firsthand as an attorney with the Pacific Legal Foundation, where my colleagues and I represent Asian American families who have felt the sting of government-sanctioned discrimination. These families seek to vindicate the principle of equality before the law, which requires government to treat people as individuals and forbids government from treating us differently on the basis of government-sanctioned stereotypes. Last week, Pacific Legal Foundation filed a case challenging Fairfax County's discriminatory changes to its admissions policy for Thomas Jefferson High School, or TJ as it is more commonly known. We represent a coalition of parents, including Dr. Chen, a Chinese immigrant who is now a chemistry professor. His eldest daughter attends TJ, but her younger sister might not get that chance. That's because the county replaced an objective test with a so-called holistic process designed to racially balance the student body at the expense of Asian American students. The changes at TJ were made against the backdrop of unfounded racial stereotypes. One school board member referred to the culture at TJ as toxic. A Virginia state delegate accused Asian Americans of being dishonest in getting their children admitted and made the baseless claim that the parents had no intention of staying in America. We're pursuing a similar case in Montgomery County, where efforts to racially balance the magnet middle schools have drastically reduced the number of Asian American students. In yet another case, I represent Asian American families in New York. My clients include Asian American immigrants who want the opportunity for their children to earn their way into public schools like Stuyvesant, Bronx Science, and Brooklyn Tech. But Mayor de Blasio stated that the majority Asian compositions of those schools was a, quote, monumental injustice, and changed the admissions policy to make it harder for low-income Asian American students to get into those schools. Pacific Legal Foundation has also filed a friend of the court brief in Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard, a case using Harvard's explicit use of race in a way that decreases Asian American enrollment. This too has led to pernicious stereotypes, including college guidebooks telling Asian American students to refrain from saying that they aspire to pursue a career in medicine or major in math or science. Apparently, those interests are too Asian. This is America. Government should not condone discrimination, and it must not actively engage in it. The subcommittee should continue to explore ways in which official government policy has discriminated against Asian Americans and continue to work with Pacific Legal Foundation and others to end this racial discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Thank you for appearing in person, and thank you for keeping your mask up. That's appreciated by all of the committee. Our next witness is Mr. Daniel Day Kim. Mr. Kim is an actor.
Changes to its admissions policy for Thomas Jefferson High School, or TJ at it.
From Cambridge University and an MA and a BA as well from Harvard. She was a law clerk for the Honorable Warren J. Ferguson of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit. Professor Sinar, you are now recognized for 5 minutes. In Oakland's Chinatown, following 2 similar incidents targeting elderly Asian residents. Mr. Kim received a Master of Fine Arts degree from New York University and his undergraduate degree from Haverford College. Mr. Kim, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Cohen and Ranking Member Roy and the members of the Judiciary Committee. I'm both honored and dismayed to be back in front of you again. Some of you may remember that I was with you just this past September discussing the importance of diversity in American media. You may recall that the reason I was moved to speak then was because the House had just recently passed H.R. 908, condemning all forms of anti-Asian sentiment. But I was disheartened to find that for a bill that required no money or resources, just a simple condemnation of acts of hate against people of Asian descent, 164 members of Congress, all Republican, voted against it. And now here I am again, because...
Now you see that? The same way that H.R. 40 has been pushed over, looked over, ignored for the last 32 years, the Asian community is going through somewhat of the same thing. Only difference, H.R. 40 is a discussion about reparations, and this is a discussion of not discriminating against Asians. They don't even want to talk about it. See the similarities? Just take a listen. This is Daniel Day Kim speaking, actor Daniel Day Kim.
As every witness in this...
You may remember him from the program Lost and also the recent remake of Hawaii Five-0.
Hearing has pointed out, the situation has gotten worse, much worse. Vicha Ratanapakdi, murdered. Pak Ho, murdered. Noel Quintana, face slashed with a blade from ear to ear. An 89-year-old woman set on fire. Tadataka Ono, a professional jazz pianist, beaten so badly he can no longer play piano. And now 7 Asian people shot dead in Georgia 2 days ago, 6 of whom were women. These are only a few of the 3,800 reported incidents since last March. I was speaking to a pollster during the recent elections, and I asked him why, when I see polling results broken down by race, do I so rarely see Asian Americans as a separate category? He heard my question, he looked me dead in the eye, and he said, because Asian Americans are considered statistically insignificant. Statistically insignificant. Now, all of you listening to me here by virtue of your own elections are more familiar with the intricacies of polling than I am. So, undoubtedly, you already know what this means. Statistically insignificant literally means we don't matter. We as Asian Americans have come to this country because we believe in the American dream. Many of us have succeeded, and some of us are even the frontline healthcare workers upon whom we've all come to depend during this terrible pandemic. But many of us are struggling too. In fact, the wealth disparity between the richest Asian Americans and the poorest is the largest of any ethnic group in America. In New York, Asian Americans have a higher poverty rate than any other minority group, where fully 1 in 4 are living below the poverty line. And poverty rates among Asian American seniors are much higher than the national average. That's something to consider as we watch the most vulnerable in our community get taunted, pushed, slashed, and murdered. Despite this wide disparity of experiences, we continue to be tagged the model minority. We simply cannot continue to live with the myth that the most successful of us represent the totality of us. So we know the hurdles we face. The question for us here is, what can we do about them? One of the places that starts is with education. Let's teach them everything that Professor Lee so eloquently highlighted for us, including celebrating the fact that the most decorated combat unit in U.S. military history was the 442nd Combat Team, a unit in World War II made up entirely of Asian Americans. Now, these are not moments in Asian American history. This is American history. When we are erased from our history books, we are made invisible. And the result, to quote Congresswoman Meng, is that we are perpetually made to feel like foreigners in our own country. Include our stories, because they matter. We must also empower our local community organizers by directing funds to areas that have been historically impoverished, not just for the benefit of the AAPI community, but for the benefit of all communities living there, most of whom are non-white. It's no wonder that there has historically been tension among racial groups when the thing they have most in common is poverty and lack of access to services. And there happen to be 2 pieces of legislation before this committee as we speak that deal with these specific issues. One is the No Hate Bill. It provides necessary grants and money to community organizations, counseling for those convicted of hate crimes, and improved data collection for hate crime reporting, among other important services. The committee also has before it right now the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act introduced by Congresswoman Meng and Senator Hirono. It's crucial that we have reliable reporting for these hate crimes and an infrastructure that makes it easy for people for whom English is not their primary language. Chairman Nadler, you have been an ally to the AAPI community in the past. I respectfully urge you not to let these bills languish in committee, but see them through so that they can be passed by the full House and then on to the Senate. Now, I'm not naive enough to think that I'm going to convince all of you to stand up for us. Trust me, I've seen your voting records. But I am speaking to those to whom humanity still matters. In closing, let me just say that there are several moments in a country's history that chart its course indelibly for the future. For Asian Americans, that moment is now. What happens right now and over the course of the coming months will send a message for generations to come as to whether we matter. Whether the country we call home chooses to erase us or include us, dismiss us or respect us, invisibilize us or see us. Because you may consider us statistically insignificant now, but one more fact that has no alternative is that we are the fastest growing racial demographic in the country. We are 23 million strong. We are united, and we are waking up. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, I'm going to end that segment with Daniel Day Kim. And I want y'all to just let that sink in a little bit. Let it really sink in a little bit. Exactly what they've been going through and other peoples of color, Black, Hispanic, Asian, Pacific Islander. There's no reason that we should not be building a coalition between all of us. There's no reason that the Asian, Pacific Islander, Black, Hispanic communities should not be compiling and sharing information so that we can all progress and all be able to fight racism all over this country. Because we're all going through the same stuff. We've all been given names by the conquerors of the United States. And let us not forget about the American natives as well. They can be brought into that same coalition with peoples of color. Because we all have been discriminated against. We all have been slapped upside the head by racism. Collectively, we could do more to change this thing. And one thing most important that Daniel Kim said when dealing with these congressmen and senators, he said, I know that I won't reach all of you because I've looked at your voting record. In other words, he's looked at how they voted on different bills and acts and what they've made law and what they haven't made law and stuff that they've left sitting in the committee, like H.R. 40. The things that they've left sitting on the table, never to be addressed, never to be passed through. It affects us all. Anti-hate bills affects us all. Anti-discrimination bills and laws affect us all. As I've said, and I shall continue to say, as I said earlier, it's not about black or white, it's about what's right. And the sooner all of us get that stuck in our heads, the better off we'll be. To the white Caucasian community. For those who say, I didn't know it was that bad, you weren't trying to see. For those of you who said, it may have been my ancestors, but it wasn't me. Well, it's time for you to step up and start letting your voice be heard to these politricksters so that they'll start doing the right thing. More of you need to step up to make these politricksters do the right thing that will press equality all over the United States and not just in certain areas. It's up to you to make sure that your congressman and senator takes the time to talk to those folks that he's supposed to or she's supposed to represent, to make sure they're upholding the continuance of pressing forward for the needs that will help all of the constituency in said communities. And as a congressman or a senator, the votes you press, you also have to realize it does not just affect your community, it affects the whole nation. So collectively, we all have a responsibility to make sure that these folks do the right thing. We have a responsibility to keep up with how these folks are voting and what they're passing and looking over and skipping over in Congress, in the Senate, in your state capitol, in your city county or city council building, across the board. All of these things have to be watched carefully by everybody. And I know it's time consuming. I know it's boring to listen to them long conversations sometimes. But I also know it's necessary. Because if we don't know what's going on across the board, we shall be the losers. Not the ones who passing the stuff or not passing it. We shall be the losers. Because those who are sitting in those seats in the Congress and the Senate, they got unlimited health care. They'll be paid for the rest of their life after they do a couple terms. They'll have a lifetime pension. Same thing with city, like I'll give you an example. Here in Detroit, if the mayor gets to stay in office for almost 8 years from the moment that they're elected that November, if they get 8 years in, they get a lifetime pension. Likewise, the same with the city council here in Detroit. If they get 8 years, they got a lifetime pension. If the state senators and state reps get a chance to finish out all of their terms that they were term limited on, they get a lifetime pension. So when you look at a person who's a lifetime politician who may have started out on the school board where they don't get paid nothing just to get their name out there here in Detroit, I'm talking. They can ride the school board and get their name out there as being good for the community. Then they can move over and become a Wayne County commissioner for a while. And if they work a certain amount of years there, lifetime pension. Then they can switch over and go to the city council and get those 8 years in, lifetime pension. Then they want to move up and say, I want to be a state rep. Get that term in, lifetime pension. Then move over and become a state senator. Same thing. Work that until they get those 4 years in or 8 years, whatever it is, lifetime pension. Then they may want to go back down to the city and say, well, I want to be a mayor and work those 8 years, lifetime pension. So then the mayor may say, perhaps I would be good in Congress. So I'm going to run to be in the House first. So I'm going to get my 8 years or so in the House, or however many years it is till their terms are fulfilled, lifetime pension. Then they'll move over to the Senate, lifetime pension. Then they may say, I can be a governor and do 8 years, lifetime pension. So a cat could go 15 years in so-called public service and serve themselves up a few pensions and be set for life. Don't even have to become president. They can just work the local circuit enough that they'll be making pretty good money. Never have to worry about anything. And if by chance they get to the Congress or Senate, I do believe, I'm not sure, but I think that free medical care follows them. I'm not sure, but I do believe that. So I'm going to have to check that before I confirm that for sure. So these are the things that, as I play this stuff that you might get a little bored with sometimes because you don't understand why I'm playing it all the time, I'm explaining it to you so that you'll know. So that you'll see that treatment of people of color does not really differ that much. The only difference is that the black people of America have been here longer and caught more hell longer. But across the board, all of the people of color in the United States have caught hell. Every last one of them. Then you have folks like the Irish who came over here. They caught hell. but they didn't catch the kind of hell we caught. But they caught hell. Because as long as they didn't have if they wouldn't have had the accent, nobody even would have known they were Irish. Or the Scots. But no matter what, if you're a person of color, it don't matter how well you speak American or the King's English. Once they look at you, the discrimination persists. That part does not hold strong with Caucasians who were from other countries. Because as long as they didn't open their mouths, nobody knew. We never had to utter a word. An Asian American never had to utter a word. A Native American never had to utter a word. A person of Hispanic or Latino descent never had to utter a word. So again, a coalition needs to be built amongst all the people of color and all of the Caucasians of goodwill. Those who want to do right. To stand against racism across the board. And until that happens, these same kinds of conversations shall continue. That's just how it is. Well, I'm coming close to the end for tonight. Not quite there yet. I want to remind you again that this program is being brought to you by RCE Notary, the mobile notary. That's RCE Notary, the mobile notary, meaning that this notary comes to you. And all throughout southeastern Michigan, you know somebody, if not yourself, that needs their documents notarized from time to time. So jot this number down. 248-861-9212. That's 248-861-9212. 248-861-9212. Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. That's Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. for RCE Notary, the mobile notary, the notary that comes straight to you. All right. I think that's about all that I'm going to play. Let's see. Let me make sure. Yeah, that's all I'm going to play for this week. And I want to prepare you for next week. We're going to have live in studio with us none other than O.C. Roberts, renowned reggae artist. O.C. Roberts will be live in studio with us, and we're going to discuss, his career and some of the pitfalls, as well as some of the things that have really happened, some of where he's been, what he's been doing, and we may even play some of his brand new stuff. So all of that will be happening with a whole lot more next week right here on the Hodo Show and the Other Viewpoint. And we'll be covering some other issues as well, but definitely we'll be having O.C. Roberts coming in. And if not next week, the weeks after next, we're going to be dealing with lobbyists and lobbying to Congress, to your state officials. What do lobbyists do? How do they do it? Are all of them good? Or have some been caught in the midst of skullduggery? So all of that and a whole lot more will be coming that week on the Hodo Show and the Other Viewpoint, brought to you exclusively on the OVP Web Network. And we're going to ask that everyone please subscribe on YouTube to OVP Web Network. That's one of our channels. That's the channel we have on YouTube. and soon coming the OVP web network exclusively on our own website. That'll be coming in the near future. And we're going to start bringing more guests to you. OC is our second guest we've had since we've been back actively doing the Hodo Show and the Other Viewpoint. We're going to be soon talking to our brother, Professor Griff from Public Enemy. And I would like to interview some of these Detroit mayoral candidates who are running against Mike Duggan. I would even interview Mike Duggan again. I don't think he'd give me another interview again, but I would even interview him again. Even though he did just go through his "you big dummy" moment with telling folks he didn't want a certain vaccine to come into the city of Detroit. So I'll be soon reaching out to different folks. And if you want to be interviewed on the Hodo Show and the Other Viewpoint, you can call my business line at 313-685-6777. That's 313-685-6777. And you can log in to my business line. If I don't pick up, please leave a message, because if you don't leave a message, you won't get a call back. I'm just letting you know. That's just how we roll, you know? So please leave a message. And I always check my messages. And I always return calls when you call me and leave a message. You know, I may not always pick up the phone right away because I may be on another business call. And I'm not one of those who say, hold on a minute, and put somebody on pause to go answer another call. If I'm in the midst of a business call, I'm going to deal with the business at hand. So if you leave a message and your name and, you know, your number, all that. Matter of fact, the voicemail gives you all of the instructions. So your name, your reason for calling, all of that good stuff. And if by chance you're a musical artist and you want to be interviewed, and you can call me and we'll see how to set that up, and how you'd be able to bring me some music or email me some music or whatever. And so we'd be able to give you your due by way, whether we bring you live in studio or whether or not we decide to have you call in on the telephone, or whatever way we decide to do it, or decide to do it live on Facebook and do a split screen. However we decide to do it, we'll let you know when you give us a call. Again, our business line for Other Viewpoint Productions is 313-685-6777. That's 313-685-6777. And we can get you an interview on the Hodo Show and the Other Viewpoint. And for those who didn't think it, now you know it. We're back. All right. It's about time for us to get ready to close this thing out. So as per usual, I want to remind you that pride goes before destruction. So please, please don't lose your pride. Meaning, don't lose your dignity. Your dignity is important. Don't lose the ability to be ashamed of doing wrong. But mainly, don't lose your doggone mind, man. Because it ain't no trouble, baby bubble, to just say it loud. And I mean real loud. I'm black and I'm proud. And if by chance you're not black, but you've been doing something of good to help humanity, you can be proud too. So, for the Hodo Show and the Other Viewpoint, I am your brother, if there is no other. I'm Hodo. Who are you? Stay locked in and guaranteed and certified. We're going to always bring you something for your doggone mind, man. Much love, much respect, and You must tune in next week and keep it coming. Well, we out.
You tuned in to WGOD on the 7-day station. Be holding a manifestation. It's time to renew your mind and rise.
This is the Hodo Show and the other Viewpoint, and I am your brother, if there is no other. I'm Hodo. Who are you? Caller, you on the air? Can you handle it? I don't think you really want to know. I'll tell you later.
I also want to give props to my brother Legion for providing us and co-writing this theme song with us.
Thank you, little brother.
Radio, what a brother know.
But it also has something for your mind. Because we've been waiting to get together for so long, but we just couldn't seem to find the right song to come together on. Caller, you on the air?
We just one step to the right. Come on, we just one step to the left. Yeah, we just say now break it down. We just say now rise it up. Now rise. Now rise.
Here's another hot joint for the 004. Legion!
All my queens, put your hands in the air. All my kings, put your hands in the air. All my queens, put your hands in the air. All my kings, put your hands in the air. Now walk with me.
Joint for the 004 Legion.
We just take step to the left. Come on, we just take step to the right. Come on, we just say now break it down. Come on, we just say now rise it up. Rise. Now rise. Get up. Get up. Get up. Now hide your bodies. Are you still broke? Get up. Radio. What a brother know. 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 Radio. You tuned in to WGOD, 7-day station.
This is the Hodo Show and the other Viewpoint.